Chapter 296. Chung Buhui stood in the lobby of the inn, leaning on his heavy sword. His eyes were filled with seriousness. Chu Xiu's words were filled with a dense coldness that actually made him feel a chill even though it wasn't cold. However, the only good thing about the fight just now was that they were sure that Chu Xiu was the only one who came after them. In that situation, Chu Xiu could easily deal with the two of them. If he had brought the other martial artists from the Guanzhong torture room, or the people from Eastern Qi, the five of them would not have been able to stop him. Looking at the destroyed inn, Chung Buhui put his hand into his pocket, but his face was filled with embarrassment. Qiu Dongmao was very perceptive. Seeing this, he immediately took out a banknote and stuffed it into the innkeeper's hand. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm really sorry for damaging your inn. Take this as a reward." The innkeeper looked at the amount on the banknote and nodded with a smile. "It's enough. Thank you, young master." The banknote that Qiu Dongmao took out was enough to buy his inn, let alone compensate for his loss. The rest of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes had a better impression of Qiu Dongmao when they saw this. In fact, the Jiangdong's 5 heroes were living a rather shabby life. After all, they were all rogue cultivators, and they were motivated to be chivalrous and help the needy. Basically, they did not have much income. Most of their income came from killing some villains or robbers, or exterminating some bandits and the like, and robbing some things from them. However, they had to keep the cultivation resources that they had robbed for themselves. After all, they were also martial artists, and they needed a lot of resources to increase their cultivation speed. However, some of the gold, silver, and other treasures were exchanged for money and given to the poor. It could be considered as robbing the rich to help the poor, so they lived a very simple life. Chung Buhui coughed and said, "Chu Xiu is alone now, but I can't guarantee that there's someone behind him. To avoid any trouble, let's leave now." The others nodded and immediately turned around to leave. The other rogue cultivators in the inn looked at each other. Chu Xiu, who was ranked 6th on the Longhu leaderboard, was going against the 5 heroes of River East. This was a big deal. If they sold this news to the wind-sweeping tower, they might be able to make a small profit. Of course, no one cared about Qiu Dongmao, who was the main target. In front of Chu Xiu and the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, Qiu Dongmao was just a supporting character. After fleeing through the night, another day passed. Chung Buhui and the others were able to hold on, but after midnight, Qiu Dongmao was already exhausted. Even though the others were carrying Qiu Dongmao on their backs, he was unable to hold on. Therefore, after nightfall, Chung Buhui did not sense any trace of Chu Xiu. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Let's take a break and eat something." Hearing Chung Buhui's words, the others also found a big tree and rested behind it. They lit a bonfire and roasted their rations. At this time, they were not afraid of being discovered by Chu Xiu, because they did not hide their traces along the way. Anyway, Chu Xiu's strength was obvious, and he was only one person. They only needed to protect Qiu Dongmao from being killed. Next to the bonfire, Wu Tiandong finished roasting a pancake and handed it to Lu Qingqing. "Fifth sister, come eat something." The others also knew that Wu Tiandong admired Lu Qingqing, but no one said anything. They were used to it anyway. Lu Qingqing took the pancake and smiled. "Thank you, fourth brother." Although she was a woman, she had already adapted to this kind of wandering life after following others around for so many years. Therefore, she did not mind it and directly picked up the pancake to eat. Wu Tiandong leaned against Lu Qingqing and said, "Fifth sister, after eating, rest for a while. With the 5 of us here, Chu Xiu will not dare to make a move." Lu Qingqing shook her head. "No need, I am not that delicate." Just at this time, Lu Qingqing suddenly lowered her voice and transmitted her voice. "Fourth brother, since Qiu Dongmao said that he is on the Crown Prince's side, then when we go to Glazed Ink City this time, will we also join the Crown Prince?" Wu Tiandong said in surprise. "Fifth sister, why do you think so?" Lu Qingqing looked at the sky and said in a downcast tone, "We have been sworn brothers for so many years and have also roamed the Jianghu for so many years. We can be considered to have some fame. However, fame is fame, and we are still considered young. But what about 10 years later, 20 years later? Are we going to continue like this? Sometimes, we women think more than you men do." Wu Tiandong hesitated. I have not really thought about this, but I will listen to Big Brother. Whatever Big Brother wants me to do, I will do it. Wu Tiandong was a little rash and impulsive, so most of the time he would only listen to Cheng Buhui. Anyway, in his opinion, what Big Brother said must be right. As long as he listened to Big Brother, then he would not be wrong. It was that simple. Lu Qingqing forced a smile. Wu Tiandong did not realize that in fact, no matter what kind of woman they were, they would not like an impulsive and brainless man who did not have any opinions of his own. Cheng Buhui and the others did not pay attention to the secret transmission between the two of them. Anyway, everyone knew about Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing, so they thought that he was whispering sweet nothings to Lu Qingqing. However, Cheng Buhui and the others did not know that Chu Xiu's figure was on a big tree 100 feet away from them. His black clothes were hidden in the night, and his eyes shone with a deep and cold light. It was indeed very troublesome for him to deal with the 5 heroes of Jiangdong alone. When they fought in the inn before, he had already come up with a countermeasure. If he fought with all his strength, it would not be a problem for him to kill the second brother, Dong Xiangyi, and the third brother, Lu Tong. However, if Cheng Buhui joined in, Chu Xiu would almost certainly lose. Cheng Buhui's strength was probably only one step away from the oneness of heaven and man state. If he fought Cheng Buhui one-on-one, Chu Xiu was not sure that he could win. Although Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing's strength was not great, they were not wooden blocks. If they secretly attacked from the side, they would still be able to cause a lot of damage to Chu Xiu. Therefore, Chu Xiu had never considered fighting them head-on, and he did not plan to find someone to help him. With Chu Xiu's connections in Eastern Qi, he could find Mo Tianlin. However, this time he mainly came for Qiu Zhenxing's cultivation method. He had no intention of sharing it with anyone else. Since they could not be defeated from the outside, he would let them rot from the inside. The identities and secrets of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong were very interesting. In the original plot, it would be a very exciting drama. Now, Chu Xiu did not mind letting the drama play out earlier. After eating the cake, Lu Qingqing stood up and said, I'm going to relieve myself. Cheng Buhui said, Be careful. Don't go too far. Let fourth brother go with you. Wu Tiandong immediately stood up and said, Leave it to me. He had fought with Chu Xiu before. Although he knew that he was no match for Chu Xiu would not be able to kill him in a second. He was not that useless. Cheng Buhui nodded and did not care. The 5 of them were here. As long as Lu Qingqing did not go too far, they would be able to help in time if Chu Xiu attacked. No matter how strong Chu Xiu was, he was not strong enough to kill them in a second. Lu Qingqing also knew the severity of the situation. She did not know where Chu Xiu was now, so she naturally would not go too far. They were all from Jianghu, not a noble family, so there was no need to be so particular. Therefore, Lu Qingqing only walked about 60 meters away. However, when she saw that Wu Tiandong was still following her, Lu Qingqing could not help but say, Why are you still following me? Do you want to take a look? Wu Tiandong's face turned red. He scratched his head and said, I'll go somewhere further and help you guard it. As he spoke, Wu Tiandong moved another 30 meters away and stood under a tree with his back facing Lu Qingqing. However, at this moment, a low, mocking voice suddenly sounded. TSK, it seems that you really think of Lu Qingqing as a goddess. You can't even bear to blaspheme her. However, you should know that there are many people who have visited her place, and they are all your acquaintances. Chu Xiu. Wu Tiandong was instantly shocked. His hand subconsciously grasped his autumn moon blade, and he wanted to shout. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu did not attack. He only made a shushing gesture and said indifferently, Don't make a sound. I did not want to attack. Otherwise, I would have attacked long ago. Don't you want to hear some secrets about your 5th sister? Wu Tiandong's hand gradually loosened, and he swallowed the words that he was about to shout. At this moment, Chu Xiu restrained his aura, and even crossed his arms in front of his chest. He indeed had no intention of attacking. Otherwise, with Chu Xiu's strength, he would be at a disadvantage even if he was not seriously injured by a sneak attack. Thinking of what Chu Xiu had said just now, Wu Tiandong frowned and said in a low voice, What did you mean just now? Chu Xiu smiled. What did I mean? You really are very simple. Don't tell me that after so many years in the martial world, you are still a virgin. Are you really going to preserve your young energy and cultivate the virgin technique? Wu Tiandong's face showed a trace of embarrassment and anger. He said angrily, Chu Xiu, what do you mean? Chu Xiu spread out his hands. Don't mind me. I was just joking just now. But what if I said that the fifth sister you have always admired, the goddess in your heart, the existence that even you can't bear to blaspheme, has an affair with all three of your sworn brothers? What would you do? Wu Tiandong's eyes widened when he heard this. He directly grasped his autumn moon blade and shouted angrily in a low voice, Nonsense! Chu Xiu said indifferently, Don't get agitated. Listen to me carefully. If you attract others, you won't be able to hear the rest of the exciting content. Chapter 297. Wu Tiandong held his saber with both hands and stared at Chu Xiu. He didn't believe what Chu Xiu had said at all. The 5 siblings had become sworn siblings, and everyone had taken good care of Lu Qingqing. That was true, but it was the kind of care an older brother would give to his younger sister. It definitely didn't include any romantic feelings. Moreover, after so many years, how could he not know his siblings as well as an outsider like Chu Xiu? Wu Tiandong said coldly, Chu Xiu, you can't beat us in a head-on fight, so you want to use this kind of conspiracy to sow discord between us. Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I'll believe what you say? Chu Xiu said slowly, although the 5 of you have become sworn siblings, you've known each other at different times. 10 years ago, there was no such thing as the Jiangdong 5 heroes. At that time, only Qing Buhui, Lu Tong, and Lu Qingqing knew each other. Lu Qingqing came from a small family and was weak. She was almost used as a marriage tool to marry a cripple. It was Qing Buhui who saved her. Beauties love heroes. Qing Buhui was a hero in front of Lu Qingqing, and he appeared when she was at her most desperate. What do you think she would think? Therefore, Lu Qingqing had taken the initiative to pursue Qing Buji since then. However, she was rejected by Qing Buji because he had great ambitions and did not want to be tied down by love. But the goddess in your heart is very bold. When Qing Buhui rejected her, she took the initiative to climb into his bed. Qing Buhui is also a normal man. What do you think he would do? Chu Xiu looked at Wu Tiandong with a strange smile, but Wu Tiandong gritted his teeth and said, You're talking nonsense. Chu Xiu said lightly, You can ask Lu Tong if I'm talking nonsense. He's one of the people who knows about this. However, Qing Buhui really had a heart of stone. She had already given her body to him, but he did not relent. Instead, he acknowledged Lu Qingqing as his sister. This was not a bad idea. Right, speaking of LV Tong, this person was very innocent. He really did not have any feelings for Lu Qingqing, but 7 years ago, Qing Buhui and the other 2 had joined forces to capture the rapist thousand-faced jade fox Song Sangchong. In the end, the 3 of them had been separated. Although LV Tong had killed Song Sangchong, he had been poisoned by the other party, and if he did not vent it, his meridians would be damaged. That 5th sister of yours is really loyal. She only needed to carry the other party for 2 hours to reach the brothel in the prefecture mansion. But she insisted on doing it herself. TSK, she's really loyal. Haven't you noticed that even though Lu Tong is your sworn brother, he treats everyone coldly except Lu Qingqing? It's not because she's the youngest among you. Wu Tiandong's face was livid. He did not know what happened 7 years ago because he did not know Qing Buhui and the others at that time. In the past, Wu Tiandong did not find anything wrong, but now listening to Chu Xiu's words and the details of their previous interactions, he could not help but have some doubts. Chu Xiu continued, As for the last one, Dong Xiangyi, he is much simpler. Do you think he is a rogue cultivator? In fact, your second brother is a genuine descendant of an aristocratic family. He is elegant and well-versed in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. His strength is second only to Qing Buhui. Isn't such a man attractive enough to women? It's a pity that your second brother has been through thousands of flowers, but not a single leaf has landed on him. There are countless women who have slept with him, but none of them have truly become his one and only woman. Didn't you notice that when you first met these people, Lu Qingqing's attitude towards your second brother was a little different from the others? After saying all this, Chu Xiu also felt that Lu Qingqing was a strange woman. It was not wrong to say that she was a fickle woman. She just chose what most women would do, which was to choose a sufficiently outstanding and strong person to be her partner. Cheng Buhui was outstanding and strong enough, but unfortunately, his heart could not contain any woman. Dong Xiangyi's character meant that the women who could catch his eye were often more outstanding than him. Lu Qingqing could not do it, so she could only be his younger sister. As for Lu Tong's incident, the original plot did not explain clearly what had happened, but there was a high probability that it was an accident. Lu Qingqing had only just begun to roam the world at that time, and it was very likely that she was so anxious that she forgot about other methods. Of course, this was something Chu Xiu would not say. Lu Qingqing's incident was normal in other places, but the mistake was that she had slept with the other members of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes. According to the normal development of the plot, Lu Qingqing would eventually agree to Wu Tiandong's passionate pursuit, and that would be the beginning of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes' breakup. Lu Qingqing was just a prelude. The Jiangdong's 5 heroes were a group that had been praised by the people of Eastern Qi for so many years. Outsiders could not imagine how many secrets and cracks there were between them. In the original plot, Lu Qingqing was only the fuse that ignited this incident, but now, Chu Xiu had ignited it in advance. Nonsense. What you're saying is all nonsense. How could an outsider like you know these things? Wu Tiandong said through gritted teeth. Chu Xiu said lightly, if you don't want people to know, then don't do it. You guys, the Jiangdong's 5 heroes, have quite a reputation in Eastern Qi, and there are many people who pay attention to you. Jiang Wenyuan had wanted to recruit you previously, so he purposely gathered some information about you. You should know that I killed Jiang Wenyuan. As for these things, I found them when I was searching Prince Enli's mansion. Anyway, Jiang Wenyuan was dead now, and the entire Prince Anil residence had been emptied. Who knew what Chu Xiu had found in the Prince Anil residence? Looking at Wu Tiandong's livid expression, Chu Xiu said slowly, actually, you're right about one thing. I came here to tell you all this to provoke you guys. But think about it carefully, if you guys were really close, I wouldn't be able to provoke you guys. Anyway, I've said what I wanted to say. Whether you want to tell this to the others or not, it's up to you. With that, Chu Xiu retreated and disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind a gloomy Wu Tiandong. At this time, Lu Qingqing had finished peeing, but when she walked over, she saw that Wu Tiandong's expression was a little off. She couldn't help but ask, fourth brother, did something happen? Wu Tiandong forced a smile and said, it's nothing, let's go back. Lu Qingqing didn't mind and followed Wu Tiandong back. But at this time, Wu Tiandong was feeling more and more uncomfortable, and the way he looked at Cheng Buhui and the others was also a little unnatural. When he thought about how the woman he liked had slept with his best brothers, he felt as uncomfortable as if he had swallowed a fly. It was said that brothers were like hands and feet, and women were like clothes, but Wu Tiandong had not reached this level yet. Although he kept saying in his heart that all of this could be fake, and that Chu Xiu had said it on purpose to sow discord between the brothers, he could not convince himself. In the end, Wu Tiandong even wanted to open his mouth and ask Cheng Buhui what was going on, but he didn't have the courage to ask this question, because he was afraid that if he asked this question, he would really break off relations with his elder brother and the others. Just like that, he spent the whole night with these thoughts in his mind, and the next day, Cheng Buhui and the others set off again. Chu Xiu followed far behind Cheng Buhui and the others, but before they went to rest, Chu Xiu walked in front of them and left a few marks on their path. When night fell, Dong Xiangyi's expression changed when he saw the marks, but he didn't make a sound. Instead, he stood up and walked in the direction of the marks. When Cheng Buhui saw Dong Xiangyi leave, he thought that he was looking for a place to pee. Out of habit, Cheng Buhui reminded him, second brother, be careful. Don't let Chu Xiu sneak attack you. Dong Xiangyi nodded and said, don't worry, big brother. Although I can't defeat Chu Xiu, he can't sneak attack me in this situation. Although he said this casually, Dong Xiangyi's expression was slightly solemn. Looking at the hidden marks on the tree, Dong Xiangyi walked in one direction for hundreds of feet before the marks disappeared. He shouted in a low voice. Chu Xiu, why did you use the Dong family to lure me out? Do you want to take them down one by one? Don't even think about it. If you dare to make a move, Big Brother and the others will come immediately, and don't think that you can kill me in a short time. Chu Xiu jumped down from the tree and said lightly, I didn't lure you out, but there's something in your heart that you can't let go of. The people of Jianghu all think that you're a lone cultivator, but they don't know that you, a seemingly miserable lone cultivator, are actually a disciple of the Jieling Dong family of West Chu, one of the 9 great families. The Dong family has a longer history than the royal family of West Chu. It has been around for thousands of years, and its bloodline is noble. How can those lone cultivators be compared to it? Dong Xiangyi was very calm. He snorted and said, So what? I'm a member of the Dong family, but that was many years ago. I have nothing to do with the Dong family now, and I've let go of everything in the past. Now I'm just Dong Xiangyi of the 5 heroes of River East, not a member of the Jieling Dong family. Besides, is it shameful to be from the Dong family? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, Of course it's not shameful, but you're lying now. There are some things that you can't let go of, and you don't want to let go. Otherwise, when you discovered the mark I left behind, you could have told Cheng Buhui about it instead of coming to see me in secret. It turns out that you still care about your background. As a disciple of the Dong family of Jieling, you're now one of the 5 heroes of River East, but I feel that your purpose doesn't seem to exist. Cheng Buhui and the others are motivated to be chivalrous and help the needy. As a young master from the Dong family of Jieling, how can you have such a hobby? I'm afraid that's not all you want, right? Chapter 298. Chu Xiu's words made Dong Xiangyi's face darken. He said coldly, What do you mean? Chu Xiu said indifferently, What I mean is very clear. Dong Xiangyi, your purpose is not pure. Among the 5 heroes of River East, the others may be worthy of the word hero, but you don't deserve it. Cheng Buhui's chivalry was to fulfill his life's wish, but you, on the other hand, are very utilitarian. You, Dong Xiangyi, were born in the Jieling Dong family, and you were even a direct descendant. But because you fought with the young talents of the previous generation of the Dong family for the position of the heir, you were framed and punished by the family. You were so angry that you directly left the Dong family, and wanted to make a name for yourself in the outside world. Then, you returned to the Dong family above board and told the people of the Dong family that they had made the wrong choice. At this time, you met Cheng Buhui and became sworn brothers with them. You made such a great reputation for chivalry in the Jianghu. Don't you want to use this reputation to do something? Cheng Buhui and the others were all born in the wilderness, so they understand the sadness of the people at the bottom of the Jianghu. But you are a son of an aristocratic family. Why do you have so many emotions? Chu Xiu's words made Dong Xiangyi feel cold all over. He felt as if he had been seen through. In fact, his identity was not a big secret, and he didn't want to hide it. However, Chu Xiu had openly said what he had been thinking about all this time. This made Dong Xiangyi feel horrified. He had never told anyone about these things, so how did Chu Xiu know? Dong Xiangyi took a deep breath and said, Then what do you mean now? Do you want to tell my big brother all these things and sow discord between us? But I'm afraid you've got the wrong idea. We have been friends for many years. Even if you say this to others, it will be useless. I want to see if they will believe you, an enemy with ulterior motives, or me. Chu Xiu shook his head. No, you're wrong. I'm not trying to provoke Cheng Buji and the rest, but you. Dong Xiangyi, you want to make a name for yourself in Jianghu with the help of the 5 swordsmen of Jiangdong, turning them into the 5 swordsmen of Eastern Qi, or even a hero praised by the whole Jianghu like Chu Kuanga, with supreme glory and fame. At that time, you would be able to openly return to the Dong clan, and you might even be invited back to the Dong clan in person. Unfortunately, you didn't realize that your calculations were wrong. The 5 heroes of Jiangdong are a group. When outsiders mention you, they will only say that you are the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Specifically, that person is Cheng Buji, the boss of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, not you, Dong Xiangyi. Think about it, all the people and incidents that you've encountered along the way were led by Cheng Buhui. He's the founder of the River East's 5 heroes, and the most famous one among them. In the end, the world only knows him as Cheng Buhui, and no matter how strong you are, you're just one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. You're just a foil, no different from the other 3. Chu Xiu's words were like a sharp knife. Every sentence stabbed into his heart, forcing him to face up to these things. However, he sadly found that everything Chu Xiu said was true. People in Jianghu only knew the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, and they only knew Cheng Buhui. If he reported his name outside, and Cheng Buhui said that he was Cheng Buhui, the other party would suddenly understand and say, "Oh, it's Master Cheng, one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong." However, if Dong Xiangyi reported his name outside, the other party would be confused. If he mentioned the 5 heroes of Jiangdong again, the other party would suddenly realize that he was one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Yes, he was just one of them. The 5 heroes of Jiangdong belonged to Cheng Buhui, and Cheng Buhui represented the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. As for Dong Xiangyi, he could only be one of them, because only one representative was needed. There was no need for a second one. Chu Xiu said slowly, "Dong Xiangyi, I heard that when you became sworn brothers, you learned the righteous manner? Have you ever thought that the 5 people of the righteous manner were indeed famous in Jianghu when they became sworn brothers? It's also a story that has been passed down for decades. But think about it carefully. What were the names of the other 4 people in the righteous manner? You can't figure it out, right? I believe that you're not the only one who doesn't know. 99% of the people in Jianghu don't know. They only remember one person, and that is the master of the righteous manner. The universe flipping hand, Nian Long. No matter how many people gather, only those who walk to the end can become famous in Jianghu. The so-called reputation can only be effective on one person. As long as Cheng Buhui is here, you'll never be able to stand out in this life." After saying that, Chu Xiu turned around and left, leaving Dong Xiangyi standing there with a gloomy expression. He was extremely conflicted. He knew that everything Chu Xiu said was to sow discord. He wanted to make the 5 of them hate each other, and make them fight among themselves. Since he couldn't defeat them head-on, he had to play these tricks secretly. But the problem was that a fly never bites a seamless egg. Since there was a loophole in his plan, he couldn't blame Chu Xiu for targeting him. Dong Xiangyi knew all this. He wanted to be more open-minded, but Chu Xiu's last sentence lingered in his ears from time to time. As long as Cheng Buhui is here, you'll never be able to stand out in this life. He returned to the campsite in a daze. Cheng Buhui saw that his face was a little pale. He couldn't help but ask, "Second brother, what's wrong with you?" Dong Xiangyi shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I'm fine. I just feel a little uncomfortable, because I haven't taken a bath for such a long time." Cheng Buhui shook his head helplessly and said, "As a son of an aristocratic family, you should change your ordinary habits. We don't have to be so pretentious in Jianghu." Cheng Buhui didn't know Dong Xiangyi's real identity, but he also guessed that Dong Xiangyi was from an aristocratic family. This could be seen from Dong Xiangyi's behavior. However, Cheng Buhui didn't care. Since they had become sworn brothers, they were all brothers. It didn't matter where they came from. Anyway, as long as everyone had chivalry in their hearts, it was fine. However, Cheng Buhui didn't notice that 2 people didn't sleep well that night. One was Wu Tiandong, and the other was Dong Xiangyi. The next morning, LV Tong got up early to fetch water from the stream. Cheng Buhui and the others didn't worry. LV Tong's sword was the fastest among the 5 of them, and his movement technique was also the fastest. Therefore, even if he couldn't defeat Chu Xiu, he wasn't afraid of Chu Xiu's sneak attack. Carrying the water bag to the stream, LV Tong fetched water expressionlessly. However, at this moment, the water bag in his hand suddenly paused. His aura, which was originally restrained, was instantly filled with murderous intent. This was because he saw a person in the reflection of the water. A person wearing black clothes, a black iron bamboo hat, and a simple black iron mask was standing on a tree and looking at him. LV Tong was very familiar with this outfit because he used to wear it for more than 10 years. In his countless nightmares, there was a person wearing a black iron bamboo hat and a black iron mask, looking at him with hollow eyes and wanting to take him back to the place he didn't want to go back to in this life. Don't get too excited. Speaking of which, you and I are in the same boat. We're both killers who betrayed the Blue Dragon Society. Don't show your weapons when we meet. Let's catch up, okay? Chu Xiu put away his bamboo hat and mask, and looked at LV Tong with a warm smile. Each of the 5 heroes of the River East had a different identity. LV Tong's origin was actually the most interesting, because he was also a killer of the Blue Dragon Society. Furthermore, he wasn't like the Ghostly Hand King and the others, who had followed the normal procedure, and paid the price before leaving the Azure Dragon Society. Like Chu Xiu, he had betrayed the Azure Dragon Society. However, he wasn't strong when he betrayed the society, so he wasn't hunted down on a large scale. Only one branch was hunting him down. Moreover, the people of the Blue Dragon Society didn't expect that a killer whose hands were stained with blood would actually become the 5 heroes of the River East. Therefore, after so many years, the people of the Blue Dragon Society didn't discover LV Tong. LV Tong said expressionlessly, "You want to reveal my identity to the Blue Dragon Society and use this to threaten me? You're thinking too much. All these years, I've made countless preparations to deal with the people of the Blue Dragon Society. I'm already very lucky to be able to live until now. If you want to go, then go. When the time comes, I'll take the initiative to leave and not cause trouble for Big Brother and the others. Don't even think about using this to threaten me." Chu Xiu looked at LV Tong with a faint smile. In fact, among the 5 heroes of the River East, LV Tong could be said to be the one with the least loopholes. He was from the Blue Dragon Society, and an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society wasn't afraid of death. Even if Chu Xiu threatened him with death, it would be useless. Moreover, LV Tong was saved by Qing Buhui. When he was on the verge of death when he was chased by the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society, it was Cheng Buhui who saved him and didn't ask about his background. However, ever since that time, LV Tong followed Cheng Buhui and listened to everything he said. It could be said that he was loyal to the point that he would really give up his life for him. An assassin from the Blue Dragon Society didn't know what chivalry meant. Even now, LV Tong didn't understand why Cheng Buhui would disregard his own interests to help others in this world where the strong preyed on the weak. However, this wasn't important because Cheng Buhui told him that as a martial artist, he should be chivalrous. So he would be chivalrous. As a martial artist, he had to punish evil. Then he would use the sword that he used to kill for his own interests to aim at those villains. LV Tong didn't understand chivalry and didn't want to do it. Everything he did was for Cheng Buhui. Therefore, he was a person that couldn't be provoked. He didn't even care about the time he had with Lu Qingqing. He didn't feel guilty towards Wu Tiandong, because he only cared about Cheng Buhui's feelings. However, people with a perfect mental state didn't exist. Perhaps they existed, but they were probably gods or saints. LV Tong wasn't a saint. He wasn't afraid of death and didn't care about anything. However, Cheng Buhui was a loophole in his mental state. Chapter 299. Chu Xiu looked at LV Tong and shook his head. "I'm not threatening you. I'm a traitor of the Blue Dragon Society. If I go to the Blue Dragon Society and expose you, wouldn't I be looking for trouble? I just want to tell you a secret. A secret that you've done before. A secret that even you don't know about. A secret about your brother, Cheng Buhui." LV Tong didn't want to talk nonsense with Chu Xiu. His hand was already on his sword. However, when he heard that this matter was related to his brother, LV Tong unconsciously let go of his sword. He said coldly, "Don't try to be mysterious. What are you trying to say?" Chu Xiu said slowly, "I'm also an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society. I know what an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society is like. Apart from killing people, it's all about cultivation. It's like a knife without any emotions. You've been a member of the Azure Dragon Society longer than I have. Perhaps you've killed more people than you can count. But do you know that one of the people you've killed was the father of your brother?" LV Tong couldn't help but tremble. He said in a low voice, "Nonsense. I was only at the inner aura stage when I betrayed the Blue Dragon Society. How could I kill my brother's father?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "It's true that Cheng Buhui is very strong, but who says that a father has to be stronger than his son? All these years, have you ever heard Cheng Buhui talk about his background? Not even once, right? because this is something that hurts him. Cheng Buhui was born in the Songyang Prefecture of Eastern Qi's Songyang Prefecture's Hegemon Sword Villa. Although the name sounds domineering, it's actually just a small villa with a few dozen people. The villa master, Cheng Nanhai, is only at the inner aura stage. When you received the mission to kill Cheng Nanhai, Cheng Buhui was roaming the world. He was Cheng Nanhai's only son, and he was also the most talented disciple in the Hegemon Sword Villa over the years. Cheng Nanhai couldn't bear to let him waste his life in the Hegemon Sword Villa, so he let him roam the world. In the end, by the time Cheng Buhui returned to the Hegemon Sword Villa, you and the other assassins had already exterminated the Hegemon Sword Villa. It was because of this that Cheng Buji was motivated to uphold justice and eliminate injustice in the world. TSK, now that I thought about it, I was starting to admire Cheng Buji. If it was anyone else who encountered such a situation, they would have fallen into a demon's dark side. If they were lucky, they would have walked the path of revenge. In the end, Cheng Buhui didn't want others to follow in his footsteps. Instead, he became a chivalrous person. His state of mind was truly admirable. However, the problem was that Cheng Buhui didn't know who killed his entire family. He didn't have the ability to find that person. Now that the enemy was right in front of him, what do you think Cheng Buhui would do if he found out about this? You were the one who personally killed Cheng Nanhai when the Hegemon Sword Villa was destroyed. Do you think Cheng Buhui would let you go out of consideration for his brotherhood and cut all ties with you? Or would he kill you? A ridiculing smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. His figure faded away, leaving behind an expressionless LV Tong, who was standing there expressionlessly, but his heart was in turmoil. The hardest thing to understand in this world was the human heart, and the easiest thing to use was also the human heart. It was extremely easy to kill with a knife, but killing with one's heart was even crueler. Even though there wouldn't be blood, the Jiangdong's 5 heroes actually didn't have much enmity with Chu Xiu, but it was a pity that they were stubborn and blocked Chu Xiu's path. Hence, Chu Xiu had no choice but to use all means to get rid of them. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame Qiu Dongmao. If Qiu Dongmao hadn't used the 5 of them, they wouldn't be standing on the opposite side now. However, Chu Xiu's personality had always been like this. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he did, he would do it to the extreme. Although the Jiangdong's 5 heroes were a group, each of them had their own thoughts and mental flaws. Chu Xiu had already planted flaws in the hearts of 3 of them, and he was only missing one person. However, this person wasn't Cheng Buhui, but Lu Qingqing. In fact, Chu Xiu really admired Cheng Buhui. He was a true chivalrous person. His family was destroyed, but he didn't lose his sight because of hatred. Instead, he chose to devote himself to Jianghu to serve justice and fulfill his lifelong wish. It could be said that among the 5 of them, only he could be called a true chivalrous person. Dong Xiangyi's chivalrous actions were full of utilitarianism, but LV Tong didn't have any chivalrous intentions in his heart. He just wanted to repay a debt of gratitude. If Cheng Buhui asked him to be chivalrous, he would do it. If Cheng Buhui asked him to become a demon and kill people, he would do the same. As for Wu Tiandong, he was impulsive and childish. He became sworn brothers with Cheng Buhui and the others because he yearned for the so-called chivalrous Jianghu. If he had encountered bandits in the early days, he might have also become a ruthless killer. As for Lu Qingqing, she was just a woman. She didn't have great ambitions, but she was unwilling to submit to fate. Everything she did was just blindly following orders. Therefore, whether it was now or in the original plot, Cheng Buhui could be called a true chivalrous person. A true chivalrous person with no flaws in his mental state could be compared to Chu Kuanga. Unfortunately, if one wanted to be a true chivalrous person in Jianghu, chivalrous heart was actually secondary. Strength and power were the most important. Chu Kuanga was able to become a great chivalrous person. The biggest contribution was not his chivalrous heart, but his cultivation that could be regarded as the top among martial arts masters. He had the entire Guanzhong torture room as his backing. Obviously, Cheng Buhui did not have these, so his fate would be somewhat miserable. Even without Chu Xiu, it would still be the same. Hidden in the dense forest, Chu Xiu quietly waited for Lu Qingqing's arrival. Dong Xiangyi and the other two had seen Chu Xiu in secret, but none of them said anything about it. Therefore, from Lu Qingqing's point of view, Chu Xiu did not even chase after her, or he did not dare to chase after her. Therefore, she also boldly went to relieve herself. Of course, in the distance, she was accompanied by Wu Tiandong, who had a strange expression on his face. At this moment, Lu Qingqing suddenly felt some movement in front of her. She subconsciously tightened her grip on the long sword in her hand, but she heard a faint voice say, "Ms. Lu, calm down. If I wanted to sneak up on you, you wouldn't be standing now." Lu Qingqing said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you really dared to chase after me. However, you underestimate me. I am indeed no match for you, but we are both in the three-flower realm, so I won't be killed by you in one move." Lu Qingqing's words were not just arrogant. Although she was a woman, her strength was not weak. She was originally from a small family and had some martial arts foundation. After meeting Cheng Buhui and the others, Cheng Buhui taught her many things about cultivation. Dong Xiangyi, who was from the Jailing Dong family, also taught her some things about the foundation of inner strength. Even LV Tong patiently taught her many killing techniques. She did not know if it was because she already had a relationship with all three of them. After wandering the martial world for so many years, Lu Qingqing had killed many people. At this time, facing Chu Xiu, she did not panic. She immediately prepared to attack and call for help. However, at this time Chu Xiu said, "Ms. Lu, you don't have to be so sensitive. I have already said that I did not want to sneak up on you. This time, my target is only Qiu Dongmao. In fact, it is very funny. I have no grudge with you Jiangdong's 5 heroes, but in the end, you are opposing each other because of an outsider. Isn't this very ironic? I said that Qiu Dongmao poisoned Qiu Zhenxing, but you don't believe me. Let's not talk about this for now. The key is that you spent so much effort to escort Qiu Dongmao to Glazed Ink City. What are you after? Benefits? Then I can tell you, don't even think about it. Qiu Dongmao can't give you any benefits. The Crown Prince only values his identity as Qiu Zhenxing's illegitimate son, and wants to use him to control the Pegasus farm. Now that Qiu Zhenxing is dead, even if the Pegasus farm chooses a new owner, it will not be Qiu Dongmao. Therefore, this person is actually already considered useless. It is already very good that he can guarantee a high position and wealth in his next life. Why do you have to work so hard? Lu Qingqing frowned, but in the end, she did not attack Chu Xiu. This was because Chu Xiu's words had indeed hit the nail on the head. After wandering the martial world with Cheng Buhui for so long, Lu Qingqing was still a little tired. After all, she was a woman and did not have as strong a conviction as a man like Cheng Buhui. From her behavior, it could be seen that Lu Qingqing wanted to marry a strong man. A man who could give her a sense of security, so that she would not have to wander around. At first, this person was Cheng Buhui, but then it became Dong Xiangyi. Of course, LV Tong should be an exception. Now Wu Tiandong was pursuing her, but Wu Tiandong was not as good as Cheng Buhui and Dong Xiangyi in all aspects except for sincerely treating her well. Therefore, Lu Qingqing was a little resistant, and had not yet agreed to Wu Tiandong's request. This time, when she escorted Qiu Dongmao, it really made her think that she could be recruited by the Crown Prince. However, she did not dare to tell others. Cheng Buhui hated being someone else's lackey. Even if this person was the Crown Prince, Dong Xiangyi did not want to submit to others. LV Tong, on the other hand, only followed Cheng Buhui. He would do whatever Cheng Buhui asked him to do. Therefore, Lu Qingqing told this matter to Wu Tiandong. Unfortunately, Wu Tiandong was a guy who did not have any far-reaching ideas. He only knew how to follow what others said. He had to listen to Cheng Buhui on this kind of matter. Looking at Lu Qingqing's expression, Chu Xiu knew that he was right. This was because Lu Qingqing was such a person in the original plot. In the end, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I'm trying to sow discord and recruit you. You can't rely on the Crown Prince, but I can introduce you to the second prince of Eastern Qi. Although this prince is not as prominent as the Crown Prince, he is more capable and famous than the Crown Prince. You don't have to be in a hurry to answer me now. I have no grudge against the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, so I will give you some time. This is also the last chance. I hope you can grasp it." After saying that, Chu Xiu immediately left. Lu Qingqing, who was still standing there, even forgot that she had to go to the bathroom. Her expression kept changing, and it was only when Wu Tiandong shouted at her that Lu Qingqing realized what she was going to do. Chapter 300. Cheng Buhui leaned against a tree and wiped the heavy sword in his hand. This heavy sword was an heirloom of the Hegemon Sword Villa, and was called Light Mountain. It was also the only fifth transformation precious weapon in the Hegemon Sword Villa. When he went out to roam the Jianghu, his father gave this sword to him, and asked him to roam the Jianghu with it. Later on, when Cheng Buhui exterminated a Jianghu villain, he found a piece of Xianyuan heavy iron. This thing had no other use other than being hard and heavy. A piece the size of a fingernail weighed a few kilograms. Cheng Buhui found a master refiner to integrate this piece of Xianyuan heavy iron into Light Mountain, turning it from a fifth transformation precious weapon to a sixth transformation precious weapon. This sword had accompanied him since he was young. Although the Hegemon Sword Villa was gone and his father had died, as long as Qingyu was around, he felt that these people were still alive, watching him carry out chivalrous deeds, fulfilling the ideals and revenge that he had in the past. After wiping the sword in his hand, Cheng Buhui looked at the sky. Although the thick fog in the forest was a little thick, it was already slightly bright. He was just about to call for everyone to set off. After a few more days of walking, they would be able to reach Black Glaze City. However, looking at everyone's condition, Cheng Buhui frowned slightly. He was actually not a very meticulous person, but rather a little rough. However, being rough was not the same as being stupid. He could clearly feel that something was wrong with everyone during this period of time. Each of them seemed to be preoccupied and absent-minded. It was fine if others were like this, but his second brother, Dong Xiangyi, had always been very thoughtful and did not like to communicate with others. Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing were not always together, so it was possible for them to quarrel. However, LV Tong had always been cold and indifferent all these years. No matter what happened, he was always calm as if his heart was as still as water. He had not changed at all over the years. But now, LV Tong always showed a look of wanting to say something to him, as if he had something to ask him. However, LV Tong did not open his mouth every time. Cheng Buhui was considerate and asked back, but LV Tong always said that he was fine. This strange atmosphere made Cheng Buhui very uncomfortable. He tied the heavy sword behind him again and sighed. Recently, he had been feeling a little uneasy. He had seen Chu Xiu's behavior in the inn. He was definitely the kind of person who would not give up until he achieved his goal. However, several days had passed, and Chu Xiu still hadn't shown up. It was as if what he had said to them in the inn was just to save his face. This was very abnormal. Cheng Buhui had heard a little about Chu Xiu's character. After all, he was already in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, and had some fame in the northern Yan and eastern Qi regions. From the description on the Longhu leaderboard, it was not difficult to see that Chu Xiu was a resolute and decisive person. However, his negative side was that he had changed a lot. He was a ruthless and cruel person. When he was an assassin in the Blue Dragon Society, his hands were already stained with blood. Later on, when he joined the Guanzhong torture room, he also killed many people in the Guanzhong region. Moreover, during the God Weapon Conference, he killed without any scruples. Those who fell into his hands were either dead or crippled. Only Yan Tingting was safe and sound. However, that was also because the Jixia Martial Arts Academy's Grand Chancellor, Xiao Baiyu, had intervened and saved Yan Tingting's life. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for her to escape death. Cheng Buhui did not believe that such a person would leave after just one exchange of blows with them, after saying those harsh words. Therefore, the more time passed, the more anxious he became. Cheng Buhui even hoped that Chu Xiu would sneak attack them along the way and try his best to kill Qiu Dongmao. That would be normal. After letting out a long sigh, Cheng Buhui cleared his mind. Recently, he seemed to be a little paranoid. After all, Chu Xiu was a member of the Guanzhong torture room. If he received news from the Guanzhong torture room halfway, he might have something urgent to deal with. Therefore, it was normal that he would not be able to kill them in time. Therefore, Cheng Buhui said, "Pack your things. We are leaving." We will reach Black Glaze City in a few days. When we get there, we will rest for a while. Second brother, you can also take a good bath. Cheng Buhui's joke did not make Dong Xiangyi laugh. He only twitched the corner of his mouth and forced himself to deal with it. Just as Cheng Buhui was about to say something, a black figure walked out from the fog and said in a mocking tone, "Great hero Cheng, I've said it before in the inn. This matter isn't over yet. The real show hasn't begun. Black Stain City, you won't be able to reach it in this lifetime." Seeing Chu Xiu's figure, Cheng Buji's expression changed. He pulled out the heavy sword on his back and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, it seems like you've run out of patience. You haven't fought a single time during this period of time, so you should know that you can't defeat the 5 of us by yourself. There's no point in forcing a battle. Stop." A strange expression appeared on Chu Xiu's face. He said, "The 5 of us? Hero Cheng, you treat them as brothers, but I'm afraid they do not want to be brothers with you. Are you curious why I did not fight all this time? Actually, I did. If you don't believe me, you can ask your brothers and sisters. Which one of them has not seen me before? Also, someone has promised to be my spy in the dark, because I can give him far more than you, the big brother. Do you believe me?" As soon as he said that, Cheng Buhui subconsciously turned his head to look at the other 4 people. Their expressions changed as well. Cheng Buhui's heart sank when he saw this. "Is what Chu Xiu said true?" Cheng Buhui asked in a low voice. Without waiting for a few people to speak, Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Everyone, you'd better not lie. Otherwise, I don't mind repeating what I've said to you all before to everyone again. I gave you a chance, and this is your last chance. Hand over Qiu Dongmao, and you will still be the 5 heroes of River East. Otherwise, you should know what awaits you. Don't forget, one of you already has my men. I may not be able to defeat 5 of you, but what about 2 of you? The person hiding in the dark is even more lethal than me." Chu Xiu's words caused the expressions of the 4 people present to change. They did not know what Chu Xiu had said to the others, but they knew that Chu Xiu had grasped their deepest secrets. Only God knew where Chu Xiu had found out about them. They all thought that they would not agree to be Chu Xiu's spy, but what about the others? Dong Xiangyi was utilitarian, so he thought that the others were also utilitarian. If Chu Xiu tempted them with benefits, would the others agree? LV Tong felt guilty towards Cheng Buhui, so he thought that the others also had all kinds of dark secrets. If Chu Xiu used this as a threat, he would rather die than compromise. Did the others have the same thoughts? There was also Wu Tiandong. The others had relationships with Lu Qingqing, but they had hidden it from him. This had already made Wu Tiandong resentful, but he did not want to lose Lu Qingqing, so he had kept it to himself. Among them, Lu Qingqing had the most complicated feelings. Previously, Chu Xiu had tempted her with the second prince to make her think about it. In the end, before she had even thought about it, Chu Xiu said that someone had already agreed. Who was this person? So should she agree or not? The 4 people all had complicated and suspicious expressions on their faces, and did not speak. Seeing this scene, Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. The brothers and sisters who had been friends with him for several years, or even 10 years, had actually met with Chu Xiu behind his back and had a secret discussion. Moreover, one of them had even become a spy. This was something that Cheng Buhui did not dare to believe, and was unwilling to believe. However, the expressions of these people indicated that Chu Xiu was not lying. Chu Xiu stretched out a finger and shook it. "I've said it before, there's only one chance. Qiu Dongmao, are you going to hand it over or not?" Qiu Dongmao hid behind the 5 people, and his expression was extremely terrified. He never thought that Chu Xiu would play such a trick and use so many tricks in secret to forcibly split the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Although they were all standing together now, it was inevitable that they would split up. Other than Cheng Buhui, the other 4 people were secretly guessing who had agreed to Chu Xiu's conditions and become his spy. Only Cheng Buhui did not suspect them. It was not that he really believed these 4 people, but he did not dare to suspect them. If he, the big brother, questioned the others, then the 5 heroes of Jiangdong would really be finished. Cheng Buhui closed his eyes and only opened them after a while. His eyes were shining with determination. Qiu Dongmao is my benefactor's son. Since we've agreed to send him to Glazed Ink City, we won't hand him over. Moreover, I don't believe that my sworn brother would betray me. The 5 heroes of Jiangdong have been one body since the day they became sworn brothers, and it's still the same now. Chu Xiu shook his head. I've given you a chance, but you didn't grasp it. Don't blame me for what happens next. As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic aura around Chu Xiu skyrocketed. The dense demonic aura on the heavenly demon dance condensed into a blurry silhouette of a demon god. As Chu Xiu slashed out with his saber, an extreme demonic aura exploded. However, within this demonic aura, there was a hint of divinity. The devil's saber of Avicii would fall forever. As soon as he made his move, Chu Xiu slashed out with the last strike of the 3 sabers of Avicii. It was a demonic saber that could be described as the ultimate judgment of purgatory. The pure demonic aura could even affect the opponent's mind. Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. Among them, he was the strongest and had the most experience in battle. He had even fought against experts in the oneness of heaven and man realm. However, Chu Xiu's saber still gave him a strong sense of pressure, causing his expression to change. Cheng Buhui held his light sword in his hand and raised it as if it was 1,000 caddies. The earth energy in his body was restrained, and when the sword fell, it suppressed the mountain and filled the sea. Chapter 301. The backlash from the 3 strokes of Avicii was too great. With Chu Xiu's current strength, he could basically use the first 2 strokes to his heart's content. However, the last stroke would still cause a considerable backlash. The powerful demonic saber collided with Cheng Buhui's heavy sword, and a shocking power instantly erupted. The earth energy fluctuations even made weaker martial artists like Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing shudder with fear. Under the collision, the ground beneath Chu Xiu and Cheng Buhui's feet was filled with holes and cracks from the impact of the earth energy, but neither of them retreated. Looking at Chu Xiu, Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. Chu Xiu's strength was far greater than he had imagined. His martial path focused on strength, and those of the same level who could withstand a blow from his heavy sword could be counted on one hand. However, not only had Chu Xiu managed to block it, but he could even rely on pure strength to clash head-on with him. This was already shocking enough. Moreover, looking at Chu Xiu's martial path, it was obvious that he did not rely on brute force. Cheng Buhui raised his heavy sword, and after a series of slashes, the powerful might made people shudder with fear. However, Chu Xiu relied on the strength of his 3 strokes of Avicii, and the powerful explosive power of the fast and slow 9 words formula to temporarily fight evenly with Cheng Buhui. Dong Xiangyi and the others frowned and simultaneously attacked Chu Xiu, fighting 5 against 1. Although they managed to suppress Chu Xiu in an instant, the more they fought, the more they felt that something was wrong. Originally, the 5 of them had joined forces to roam the pugilistic world, and their tacit understanding between each other was very high. However, now their attacks were very awkward. Cheng Buhui had just sent Chu Xiu flying with his sword, and Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong, who were the most lethal, should have joined forces to receive Cheng Buhui's attack. However, the 2 of them had held back when they attacked, guarding against each other, and even using their mental power to guard against Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing behind them. Because of this, the rhythm of the 2 of them was not right. It was not even as good as when the 2 of them had attacked Chu Xiu in the inn. Now the 2 of them had been caught by Chu Xiu, and he directly used the Wisdom Fist seal to seal the space. The Devil Blade of Avicii blasted out continuously, forcing the 2 of them to retreat. Originally, Cheng Buhui could be evenly matched with Chu Xiu in a one-on-one fight. However, now that the 5 of them had attacked together, they were forced into a corner by Chu Xiu. The reason was that suspicion and cracks had actually appeared among the 5 of them. To be precise, 4 of them did not trust each other. Cheng Buhui, on the other hand, had the courage to trust the others. He believed that his sworn brother would not secretly attack him, but the others did not have the courage to believe that there was no one who would seek refuge with Chu Xiu. After all, the things that Chu Xiu had said to them had already shaken their state of mind. Now that Chu Xiu had said these words, no one could be sure whether anyone had agreed to be a mole for Chu Xiu. Therefore, If someone really became a mole for Chu Xiu and betrayed them by launching a sneak attack while they were fighting fiercely, they would almost certainly die. No one was willing to gamble with their lives. Dong Xiangyi and the other three were the same. The five of them worked together to besiege Chu Xiu. But the more they fought, the more aggrieved they became. The more they fought, the more their hands and feet were tied. This made Qing Buhui frown immediately. He shouted in a low voice, "The four of you, take young Master Qiu and escape first. I'll cover the rear." Dong Xiangyi and the other three looked at each other. They had no choice but to take Qiu Dongmao and leave. Chu Xiu forced Qing Buhui to retreat with a sinister slash filled with demonic qi. He smiled and said, "Qing Buhui, aren't you afraid that the mole I left among the four of them will attack and kill Qiu Dongmao?" Alone and with his sword, Qing Buhui exploded with even more power than before. He even had a trace of an aura that was strong enough to fight against Chu Xiu head-on. "Mole? I don't believe it. Among my sworn brothers, no one is a mole, and no one will betray our former beliefs." Qing Buhui's tone was firm. He was not affected by Chu Xiu at all. The light sword in his hand was extremely steady. No matter how strong Chu Xiu's blade aura and demonic qi were, they could not break through his defense. Chu Xiu's face revealed a trace of mockery. "Great hero Cheng, you're really magnanimous. You're right to believe them. Even in the hearts of the other four, only you, great hero Cheng, can be trusted unconditionally. Unfortunately, the four of them can't trust each other to the same degree as you." Qing Buhui's expression changed. To him, he could trust the others, and the others could trust him. But what about the others? Even Qing Buhui did not dare to guarantee this with 100% certainty. However, Qing Buhui did not have the time to think so much. He held the light sword in his hand, pushed all the distracting thoughts to the back of his mind, and fought with Chu Xiu with all his might. Chu Xiu was not in a hurry. The best part was yet to come. The secrets and grudges of the five heroes of Jiangdong were enough to make them break up completely. At this time, there was no need for Chu Xiu to fight them head-on. He only needed to add fuel to the fire. On the other side, Dong Xiangyi and the others also left with Qiu Dongmao. However, after running for more than 10 miles, Lu Tong stopped and said, "You guys leave first. I'll go help Big Brother." To Lu Tong, the reputation of the five heroes of Jiangdong was not important. Even Qiu Dongmao was not important. Only Qing Buhui was important. Although Qing Buhui could actually fight evenly with Chu Xiu alone, Lu Tong was still worried about Qing Buhui and wanted to go back to help him. However, at this time Wu Tiandong frowned and said, "Third brother, Big Brother is completely capable of stopping Chu Xiu. Why are you going back? Do you have an ulterior motive?" Wu Tiandong's words were explosive. He almost said that Lu Tong was a mole, and that he was going back to kill him instead of helping Qing Buhui. If it was in the past, Wu Tiandong would never say such a thing. However, when he thought about how Lu Tong had a relationship with Lu Qingqing, and that Lu Qingqing was the one who initiated it, Wu Tiandong felt as if he had eaten a fly. He could not help but feel a trace of disgust towards Lu Tong. Moreover, Lu Tong did not have a good relationship with the others. After all, in his heart, only Qing Buhui was the most important. Even the so-called five heroes of Jiangdong were not important. Therefore, Lu Tong was cold most of the time. He did not speak much, and he was not very close to the others. Under normal circumstances, this kind of thing would not show. However, at this time, it was as if these things had been suppressed for a long time, and they suddenly erupted. Lu Tong, who was about to leave, turned around and looked straight at Wu Tiandong. He said coldly, "What do you mean? Are you saying that I'm a mole?" Wu Tiandong snorted coldly. "I didn't say that. You said it yourself." A murderous look appeared in Lu Tong's eyes. Qing Buhui was his reverse scale. Other people could say anything about him, but they could never question his loyalty to Qing Buhui. A blood-red blade appeared in Lu Tong's hand, and the blood avoidance sword was already placed on Wu Tiandong's neck. He said coldly, "If you talk nonsense again, I'll kill you." Lu Qingqing hurriedly said, "Third brother, what are you doing? Put down the sword." Dong Xiangyi, who was standing aside, quickly said, "Third brother, stop fooling around. This is not the time to fool around." Lu Tong said coldly, I'm not fooling around. You should know what exactly is going on. What did Chu Xiu get on you that made you choose to be his mole? Dong Xiangyi, if it weren't for Big Brother, how could a down-and-out child like you have such a reputation now? But you're always provoking Big Brother's authority. If it weren't for your age, and Big Brother asked the 5 of us to become sworn brothers, do you think you're qualified to be my second brother? Don't think that I don't know what you're scheming. You're the most likely person to be the mole. Dong Xiangyi's expression changed. He snorted coldly and said, Third brother, are you crazy? Why are you biting me? If I were a mole, I would have taken action just now. How could I have joined forces with you to besiege Chu Xiu? Lu Tong ignored him. Instead, he stared at Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing and said coldly, And you too, if it weren't for Big Brother, one of you would just be a fledgling rogue cultivator in Jianghu, and the other would have been sacrificed to marry a good-for-nothing. Now you've betrayed Big Brother and are ungrateful. Even if Big Brother forgives you, my sword will not spare you. There was no fear on Wu Tiandong's face. Instead, he took a step forward and said coldly, Kill me if you can. Now you're talking as if you're a good person. Why didn't you stand up and refute Chu Xiu's words just now? Do you dare to say that you've never done anything to disappoint Big Brother and everyone else? Although Wu Tiandong didn't know what Chu Xiu had said to him, it seemed that everyone had their own secrets that they didn't want to reveal. Everyone was the same. How noble could Wu Tiandong be? What right did he have to criticize others? At the moment, the 4 of them had their own thoughts. It could be said that the brotherly relationship in the past had been completely torn apart. They were all full of contradictions and distrust. Moreover, Cheng Buhui was not here at the moment, so no one could suppress them at all. Qiu Dongmao, who was behind them, wanted to dissuade them, but unfortunately, he didn't say anything in the end. Qiu Dongmao was a man with good judgment. At the moment, the 5 heroes of River East were full of hostility. They had simply changed from brothers to enemies. What could he do? If he spoke rashly, it was very likely that even he would be implicated. Qiu Dongmao could also see that among the 5 heroes of River East, only Cheng Buhui really wanted to repay his kindness and send him to Black Glaze City. But now that Cheng Buhui was not here, it was better for him to keep a low profile for the time being. Chapter 302. Just as Dong Xiangyi and the other 3 were about to fight amongst themselves, Cheng Buhui was still fighting with Chu Xiu. However, the more he fought, the more shocked he became. In reality, the 2 of them had yet to go all out. Cheng Buhui only wanted to stop Chu Xiu so that the other 4 could escape. Meanwhile, Chu Xiu did not want to go all out either because there was no need for him to. There was already a rift between the Jiangdong's 5 heroes. What Chu Xiu needed to do now was to add fuel to the fire and make it burn even more intensely. There was no need for him to fight Cheng Buhui to the death. Therefore, when Chu Xiu fought with Cheng Buhui, rather than saying that he was fighting with Cheng Buhui, it would be more accurate to say that he was using this opportunity to train his own realm, allowing him to break through to the 5 Qis unifications. Realm did not equate to combat power. This was a publicly acknowledged fact in the underworld. Realm was easy to determine, but combat power was very complicated. It was related to the martial arts and techniques that one cultivated, or the external environment and one's entire being. Therefore, there was no way to distinguish them in detail. However, to most of the martial artists in the underworld, their combat power was not as good as their realm. Only a freak like Chu Xiu would always have a combat power that was above his realm at every stage. Therefore, he needed to polish his current realm and comprehend the next realm. On the other hand, Cheng Buhui's strength was almost at the peak of the 5 Qis collecting in spirit. He only needed an opportunity to achieve the integration of heaven and man. If Cheng Buhui had chosen to rely on a force earlier and obtain powerful resources, he might have been able to step into this realm a long time ago. The heavy sword in Cheng Buhui's hand slashed out consecutively. There was no aura released from the blade of the sword, but the inner force of this power crushed everything else. Even Chu Xiu's blood-refined divine shield was unable to resist this extreme power. Sensing that Dong Xiangyi and the rest had escaped far away, Cheng Buhui shouted, An extremely powerful wave erupted from the heavy sword in his hand. The power stacked together like a landslide and sent Chu Xiu flying. He then took the opportunity to escape and regroup with Dong Xiangyi and the rest. Dusting off the dust on his clothes, Chu Xiu looked at Cheng Buhui's back and said, "You're leaving now? The show has only just begun." After Cheng Buhui forced Chu Xiu to retreat, he followed Dong Xiangyi and the others. Cheng Buhui originally thought that they must have escaped far away, but who would have thought that he would see Dong Xiangyi and the others in a state of mutual hostility after walking for more than 10 miles? "What are you doing?" Cheng Buji couldn't help but shout. Dong Xiangyi snorted. "Big brother, third brother is crazy. Everyone looks like Chu Xiu's spy, but he refuses to say what he said to Chu Xiu." LV Tong closed his eyes and said in a low voice, "Big brother, I will never betray you, but we can't let the others live. They have other intentions. Chu Xiu's spy could be 1 or 3. Wu Tiandong snorted. "What makes you say that you won't betray Big brother? If you have the ability, then say it on the spot. What exactly did Chu Xiu say to you to make you so afraid?" LV Tong clenched his teeth and did not speak. He would not betray Cheng Buhui, but he really did not dare to say what Chu Xiu told him. At this moment, Chu Xiu's voice came from behind. "I can testify to this. LV Tong did not betray Cheng Buhui, and he is not my spy. It's because he feels guilty towards you, great hero Cheng." LV Tong's eyes widened. He pointed his sword at Chu Xiu and shouted, "Shut up!" The corners of Chu Xiu's mouth curled into a smile, but in LV Tong's eyes, that smile was extremely evil. "Great hero Cheng, the people who did the extermination of the Hegemon Sword Villa were from the Blue Dragon Society. As for the person who instigated the Blue Dragon Society, you have not been able to find out. However, the person who killed your father is right in front of you. Your third brother is an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society. The person who beheaded your father, Cheng Nanhai, was LV Tong." As soon as he said that, everyone present was stunned. This news was really explosive, so much so that no one present could react. The person who had been a brother for 10 years actually became the person who killed his father in the blink of an eye. This change stunned Cheng Buhui, and his eyes revealed a look of disbelief. "Is what Chu Xiu said true?" Cheng Buhui looked at LV Tong and asked in a hoarse voice. LV Tong's eyes revealed a look of pain. He wanted to deny it, but in the end he still nodded. At this moment Wu Tiandong suddenly said, "Just now, you said that we were all spies, but in the end, you became the murderer who killed Big Brother's father. Do you still want to kill Big Brother now?" "Shut up!" LV Tong shouted, and there was a trace of killing intent in his eyes as he looked at Wu Tiandong. Chu Xiu clapped his hands and said, "Don't mind him. It's normal for your fourth brother to be angry. He pursued a woman for so many years, but in the end, she had an affair with all of you. Everyone in the Jiangdong 5 heroes knows about this, except for him. When did any of you ever treat him as a brother? It's normal for him to harbor resentment." Lu Qingqing's face immediately revealed a look of shame and indignation. She was a woman after all, and she had taken the initiative to do those things in the past. However, knowing it herself and having it revealed to Chu Xiu were two completely different concepts. Wu Tiandong's face was red, and his eyes revealed a trace of humiliation and hatred. When Chu Xiu didn't say it before, he could still play dumb. However, now that Chu Xiu had revealed everything, he couldn't even play dumb anymore. When he thought of how he used to flatter Lu Qingqing, and how the other 3 had seen it, he was probably no different from an idiot in their hearts. The more Wu Tiandong thought about it, the angrier he became. He pointed at Cheng Buhui and said sternly, "Big brother, I've respected you as a father all these years. When I was pursuing fifth sister, if you said she was your woman, how could I have any improper thoughts about her? In the end, all of you knew, but none of you said it. In your eyes, do you still treat me Wu Tiandong as a brother? Do you all think I'm an idiot?" Cheng Buhui's expression changed slightly. In fact, he really hadn't thought about it that way. In his opinion, what happened in the past was a misunderstanding. People in the pugilistic world didn't care about trifles, and he had never thought about marrying Lu Qingqing. Later, Wu Tiandong fell in love with Lu Qingqing. Could he really tell Wu Tiandong that Lu Qingqing was his woman, and also Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong's woman? If that was the case, the five of them would have broken up long ago. For Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong, they didn't say it because they didn't care about it at all. It was that simple. And you, Lu Qingqing, am I no different from an idiot in your eyes? Wu Tiandong pointed at Lu Qingqing and shouted. One had to know that he had never raised his voice to Lu Qingqing before. A trace of anger appeared on Lu Qingqing's face. In fact, she really didn't care about Wu Tiandong from the beginning, including Wu Tiandong's confession of love. She actually rejected it. After all, compared to Qing Buhui and Dong Xiangyi, the gap between Wu Tiandong and them was too big. She subconsciously resisted it. Later, when Lu Qingqing realized that it was really impossible for her to be with Qing Buhui and Dong Xiangyi, she began to try to accept Wu Tiandong. In the end, such a thing happened. But she didn't think that she had wronged Wu Tiandong, because until now, she hadn't promised him anything. Dong Xiangyi frowned and said, Fourth brother, love between a man and a woman is just a small matter. Are you going to fall out with Big Brother and us because of this small matter? Chu Xiu nodded and said, That's right. Love between a man and a woman is just a small matter. Fighting for power is a big matter. Dong Xiangyi, I told you before that you want to make a name for yourself with the help of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, and then return to the Jielingdong family openly. But as long as Qing Buhui is alive, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will always be synonymous with Qing Buhui. You, Dong Xiangyi, are just one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong and will never be able to stand out. Why don't you join forces with me now? I'll help you get rid of Qing Buhui and the others, and I'll bear the blame for you. From now on, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will respect you, and the reputation that Qing Buhui and the others left behind will all belong to you. Seeing that Qing Buhui and the others were looking at him, Dong Xiangyi shouted, Nonsense! When did I want to fight for power with Big Brother? With the 5 of us, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will be the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Without Big Brother, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will really be gone. Among the people present, Dong Xiangyi was actually the least afraid of Chu Xiu, because Chu Xiu had indeed said what he was thinking. That was true, but it was also just his thought, and there was no direct evidence, so he could completely deny it. In fact, when he denied it, Dong Xiangyi was really tempted for a moment, but it was only for a moment before he completely extinguished it. Humans were not plants, so how could they be emotionless? Dong Xiangyi was indeed a little utilitarian, including his so-called chivalrous deeds. But after all, he had been sworn brothers with Qing Buhui for so many years, and he knew what kind of person Qing Buhui was. No matter how utilitarian he was, he could not join forces with Chu Xiu to kill his former big brother, even if he really wanted the reputation that Qing Buhui had. However, at this time, Qing Buhui and the others looked at Dong Xiangyi with a somewhat complicated gaze. No one was an idiot. They all knew that Dong Xiangyi used to be very calculative and utilitarian, but they did not expect that Dong Xiangyi would want so many things. At this time, when Chu Xiu said all these, Qing Buhui and the others thought of the little things that Dong Xiangyi used to get along with them. Indeed, sometimes Dong Xiangyi would steal Qing Buhui's limelight, but at that time they did not care. Because Qing Buhui did not care about fame, the others did not say anything. But now it seemed that Dong Xiangyi had some other intentions since they became sworn brothers. Chapter 303. Under Chu Xiu's incessant provocation, the rift between the Jiangdong's 5 heroes was getting bigger and bigger. Even Xiu Dongmao, who was at the back, was shocked when he heard that. In Eastern Qi, the Jiangdong's 5 heroes were quite famous, and all of them were positive. Some people even claimed that if one of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes could step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, and combine with the connections that the Jiangdong's 5 heroes had accumulated over the years, it would become a community of Eastern Qi. Unfortunately, the people in Jianghu would not live to see that day. Every word that Chu Xiu said was like the tip of a knife, stabbing into the hearts of the people present. The rift could no longer be mended. At this time, LV Tong closed his eyes. He seemed to have mentally prepared himself for something and said to Qing Buji in a decisive tone, "Big brother, you saved my life. When I was in the Blue Dragon Society, I never felt like a human. I only regarded myself as a sword, a killing machine without feelings. It was not until I met you that I knew what a human was. The Hegemon Sword Villa was destroyed by the Azure Dragon Society, and your father was also killed by me. Chu Xiu wasn't wrong about this. Since it has happened, I can only compensate with my life. I can also help you get rid of all the obstacles behind you before committing suicide. In the next life, we will be brothers again. As soon as he finished speaking, the blood avoidance sword in LV Tong's hand emitted a hazy blood-red light. Even half of his body was dyed blood-red. LV Tong chose to burn his blood essence as soon as he arrived. What shocked everyone was that LV Tong did not attack Chu Xiu. Instead, he chose to kill Dong Xiangyi with his sword. Only then did everyone understand what LV Tong meant by the obstacle. The obstacle was not Chu Xiu, but Dong Xiangyi. LV Tong was an extreme and stubborn person. Sometimes even Cheng Buji could not stop him. In LV Tong's opinion, Dong Xiangyi was not a mole, and was ready to die. Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing were weak, so it did not matter even if they were moles. Moreover, after this incident, they would no longer have anything to do with the Jiangdong's 5 heroes. Therefore, from this perspective, Dong Xiangyi, whose ambition had been exposed by Chu Xiu, was the biggest threat to Cheng Buji. Moreover, Dong Xiangyi had previously revealed his restlessness and ambition. At that moment, LV Tong had made a decision to kill Dong Xiangyi. If Dong Xiangyi died, it would be fine, but if he did not, he would commit suicide on the spot and give his life to his brother. Cheng Buji's expression suddenly changed when he saw this, and he shouted, "No!" Unfortunately, Lu Tong was a stubborn man. Once he made up his mind, even Cheng Buhui could not persuade him, let alone Lu Tong, who was ready to die. Cheng Dong Xiu and wanted to stop LV Tong. To be honest, Cheng Buji did have mixed feelings when he found out that LV Tong was the person who killed his father. However, Cheng Buji was broad-minded. He quickly figured out the crux of the matter. The Blue Dragon Society was an assassin organization. All the assassins in the Blue Dragon Society were their employers' swords and knives. They were emotionless killing machines. His real enemy was the person who hired the Blue Dragon Society to kill him, not LV Tong. Even if LV Tong did not make a move, the Blue Dragon Society would have sent other assassins to destroy his Hegemon Sword Villa. Therefore, this could only be a coincidence and a misunderstanding. However, Cheng Buji had accepted it, but LV Tong did not. He wanted to use his own life to kill Cheng Buji. Why did he have to do that? However, just as Cheng Buhui was about to make a move, Chu Xiu's figure had already appeared in front of Cheng Buhui. He said expressionlessly, "Great hero Cheng, the show has just begun. I can't let you interrupt it. Right now your opponent is me. Get lost." Cheng Buji yelled. His eyes were bloodshot. His killing intent was surging. He had made an enemy of Chu Xiu to protect Qiu Dongmao. To put it in a more grandiose way, it was for his own beliefs. Now he really wanted to kill Chu Xiu. After Chu Xiu's words, the Jiangdong 5 heroes had completely broken off. Even if they did not die today, they would never be able to go back to the past. Moreover, it was also because of Chu Xiu that his third brother wanted to fight with his second brother. This was something that Cheng Buhui absolutely could not tolerate. Even if Dong Xiangyi was ambitious, Cheng Buji did not want to lose the brotherly relationship between them as long as he did not make a move. However, after Chu Xiu's casual words, he caused the brothers to kill each other and completely break off their relationship. At this moment, Cheng Buji really wanted to kill Chu Xiu. The light Yu heavy sword exploded with boundless might, causing a powerful sonic boom to resound through the air. The heavy sword slashed towards Chu Xiu, bringing with it an unparalleled might. In the past, when facing Cheng Buji, Chu Xiu had actually held back a little. However, this time, Chu Xiu also wanted to kill. The show had begun. Since the Jiangdong 5 heroes were determined to stop him, Chu Xiu would not be lenient. In fact, Chu Xiu admired people like Cheng Buji. Unfortunately, he would never be a person like Cheng Buji. Moreover, admiring him didn't mean that Chu Xiu would be merciful. Just as Cheng Buji made his move, Chu Xiu blasted out the Wisdom Fist seal. It covered heaven and earth and sealed off the space. Chung Buji's heavy sword struggled to break through the big net of Gang Qi created by the Wisdom Fist seal. However, its speed was extremely slow. At the same time, the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand became extremely evil. The powerful demonic aura merged with the scarlet blood divine power, and intertwined with each other. He slashed out a strange and evil devil blade of Avicii. However, this time, Chu Xiu did not use the powerful blade momentum. Instead, he chose to absorb the demonic aura from the devil blade of Avicii into his body. It turned into a strange and evil blade momentum, and slashed toward Chung Buji. During the previous fight, Chu Xiu was not only training his realm, but also familiarizing himself with Chung Buji's martial arts route. In reality, the martial arts that Chung Buji grasped were not very strong. Whether it was his inner force or his techniques, they could only be considered ordinary. After all, the Hegemon Sword Villa that he came from was only a small village. All these years, Chung Buji did not take on a master, nor did he choose to rely on other forces. His strength was obtained through killing in the Jianghu. In a simple and direct manner, he used his strength to break through everything. On the other hand, Chu Xiu's martial arts were much more complicated than Chung Buji's. It could be said to be strange and ever-changing. When it needed to be overbearing, it would be overbearing. When it needed to be evil, it would naturally be incomparably evil. Before the Buddhist light created by the Wisdom Fist seal dissipated, Chu Xiu's devil blade of Avicii had already slashed over with blood-colored Gang Qi. The blade momentum was strange and ever-changing. When the two combined, it actually gave off an extremely mystical feeling. Chung Buji's face was filled with murderous intent. The light mountain sword in his hand exploded with a dazzling light. The heavy sword's blade seemed to weigh thousands of kilograms. It was as if he was going head-on against Chu Xiu, disregarding the consumption of his own inner force to fight head-on. Under the so-called pure power, whether it was the Wisdom Fist seal's spatial seal, or the devil chi drawn by the devil blade of Avicii, they all shattered. Under this series of attacks, although Chu Xiu's attacks were all broken in reality, Chung Buji was the one who exhausted the most. At this moment, he was also the most anxious because Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong had already started fighting. LV Tong was truly not afraid of death. Or rather, he was already prepared to die for Chung Buji. Therefore, when he fought with Dong Xiangyi, he used almost all his strength to attack. He actually managed to force Dong Xiangyi, who was stronger than him, to retreat step by step. He did not dare to fight head-on. After all, LV Tong had the will to die, but he Dong Xiangyi did not. Dong Xiangyi blocked LV Tong as he shouted, "Fourth brother! Fifth sister! Third brother has gone crazy! Come and help me!" There was a hint of struggle in Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing's eyes, but neither of them moved. Wu Tiandong did not move because he was angry with both of them. Now that he saw them fighting to the death, Wu Tiandong even felt a little happy. Naturally, he would not come. Moreover, LV Tong had already started to fight desperately. If he rashly made a move, it was very likely that he would be killed by the angry LV Tong. The same was true for Lu Qingqing. She had already lost enough face today, and she did not want to stand out and embarrass herself at this time. Moreover, even if she was shameless, it would be useless for her to go forward with her strength. Moreover, she thought more than Wu Tiandong. Now that her suspicions had appeared, Chu Xiu had also pointed out Dong Xiangyi's thoughts. Although there was no evidence, it was obvious that Dong Xiangyi was also ambitious. Eldest brother would definitely not kill Dong Xiangyi. Wouldn't it be better to let LV Tong do it now? Not only would he get rid of one person, he could also make the other person bear all the blame, and he would become a tragic hero. This could be said to be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Of course, in reality, Chung Buhui's thoughts were not as complicated as Lu Qingqing thought. The only thing he wanted now was to save Dong Xiangyi and calm LV Tong down. Therefore, when Chu Xiu stuck close to him to stop him, Chung Buhui burned his blood essence in anger. In an instant, the Qingyue was covered by the crimson blood flame. The heavens are vigorous, so a gentleman should constantly strive to improve himself. The earth is koan, so a gentleman should be virtuous. Chung Buhui's sword momentum was not agile, but only steady and domineering. As the sword fell, Chu Xiu's devil chi suddenly shattered. Before the sword fell to the ground, the entire ground had already been shaken by Cheng Buhui's blow, leaving a deep sword mark. The internal binding seal exploded, and Chu Xiu's figure quickly retreated. However, at this time, Cheng Buhui had already made up his mind to kill Chu Xiu and had even burned his blood essence. How could he let Chu Xiu escape so easily? He spat out a mouthful of blood on his Qingyue, and the dark red blood condensed into a strange rune, causing his Qingyue sword to explode with a tremendous force. As the sword fell, everything around it was drawn by this sword, forming a huge gang qi storm around Cheng Buhui. This was Cheng Buhui's trump card, and also the martial art technique that he did not want to use the most. It was a secret technique of the devil path, the Kuan symbol sword technique. Chapter 304. The origins of Cheng Buhui's martial arts were very complicated. He mainly cultivated some simple inner force and sword techniques that were passed down from his ancestors in the Hegemon Sword Villa. Although they were ordinary, he relied on his great willpower to cultivate to his current level. He was even able to contend against Chu Xiu, who had a full set of high-grade techniques. However, this did not mean that Cheng Buhui did not have any other trump cards other than these basic techniques. The Kuan symbol sword technique was one of them. Cheng Buhui had been chivalrous all these years and killed many villains. He had also obtained many powerful demonic secret techniques from them. However, Cheng Buhui did not choose to cultivate any of them. This was because most of the techniques that these villains cultivated were incomparably evil. It was too different from Cheng Buhui's martial arts, so it was not suitable for him to cultivate even if he wanted to. However, the Kuan symbol sword technique was a famous demonic secret technique in the past. It was a part of the 8 Extreme Demonic Book. He only needed to use his blood essence to activate it, so he did not need to pay any other price. This was also the only demonic technique that Cheng Buhui had cultivated all these years. It was his true trump card. With the support of the Kuan symbol sword technique, Cheng Buhui, who was originally very powerful, became even more ferocious and violent. Under the endless astral energy storm, even the ground was swept into a mess. Although Chu Xiu had the internal binding seal in his hand, the surrounding astral energy was constantly pulling him back, forcibly pulling him back. Within the astral energy storm, Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a surging murderous intent. This was the second time in so many years that he wanted to kill someone so much. The first time was when he learned that the Hegemon Sword Villa had been destroyed. At that time, he wanted to find the culprit and kill him. Of course, the person that Cheng Buhui wanted to kill at that time was not Lu Tong, but the person who instigated the Blue Dragon Society to destroy his Hegemon Sword Villa. Now the person that Cheng Buhui wanted to kill was Chu Xiu, the Chu Xiu who had destroyed the Jiangdong 5 heroes. Against Cheng Buhui's sword, Chu Xiu sheathed his saber and formed a seal. However, the seal he formed this time was incomparably complicated and took the longest time. When Cheng Buhui's sword that brought along a boundless gang qi storm arrived before him, his seal was only just completed. At the same time, when the seal landed, it also exploded with a supreme divine light. 5 different colors of light constantly appeared in Chu Xiu's hands. They were connected head to tail like a wheel, endlessly multiplying. Zai word technique. Sun will seal. 5 elements. Attack must counter. Wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. 5 different types of attacks were unleashed at the same time. The power of the 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other. It was like the great sun will was rotating. This was the sun will seal. Among them, the Aquarius seal and the sun will seal were the most exhausting ones. Originally, Chu Xiu did not want to use the sun will seal now. Chu Xiu didn't want to use the Sunwheel Seal right now, because the most suitable time to use the Sunwheel Seal was the 5 Qis origin realm. At that time, the 5 elements would circulate, and the 5 Qis would become one. When using the Sunwheel Seal, there would be almost no backlash. However, facing Cheng Buhui's Kuan word technique, Chu Xiu had no way of dealing with the extreme power. He could only use an equally powerful force to block it. This was also the martial Dao that Cheng Buhui had always adhered to. There were no miraculous transformations, only pure power to crush everything. The five-colored wheel of light transformed and clashed with Cheng Buhui's sword. Instantly, an earth-shattering sound was heard. Countless earth chi exploded in the surroundings, tearing the ground apart and causing countless gravel to fly. In the middle of the storm, the five elements in Chu Xiu's fist seal continued to spiral and collapse. Even if his inner force was raised to the extreme, it was of no use. Chu Xiu could only use the internal lion seal to suppress himself. Only then could he withstand the powerful force. However, his body was forced to retreat more than 10 steps. Even his arms were trembling. Traces of blood appeared and dyed Chu Xiu's arms red. The collision between the sun wheel seal and the Kuan word technique was too powerful. It was so powerful that even Chu Xiu's body could not withstand it. A strand of blood flowed out from Chu Xiu's mouth, but he only casually wiped it off. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he looked at Cheng Buhui, who was in the middle of the storm. That was because Cheng Buhui's injuries were more serious than his. In a battle between the two, the one who risked his life first would lose. Cheng Buhui was anxious and risked his life, but he did not risk his life to kill Chu Xiu. Therefore, the one who died was him. The dust and earth chi dissipated. Cheng Buhui's majestic figure was swaying, and his face was extremely pale. Although the Kuan word technique was based on the 8 extremities force, it was also a demonic technique. It was a secret technique that burned one's blood essence to fight for one's life. The backlash was much more severe than Chu Xiu's sun will seal. Raising the light mountain sword in his hand, Cheng Buji gritted his teeth and wanted to attack again. However, at this time he realized that Lu Tong had actually forced Dong Xiangyi to his limits. In the end, Lu Tong ignited his blood essence, causing both his body and the blood avoidance sword in his hand to be suffused with a demonic blood-red color. With a desperate attack, he actually killed Dong Xiangyi. No one had expected this to happen. Although the 5 heroes of the River East had sworn an oath based on their age, it also represented their strength. Dong Xiangyi was ranked second, and his strength was also second. He was slightly ahead of LV Tong. However, he died in the hands of LV Tong. Even Dong Xiangyi himself could not believe this result. Dong Xiangyi regretted not agreeing to Chu Xiu's condition and joining forces with him to kill Cheng Buhui and the others. Dong Xiangyi finally realized that he was still selfish. Compared to his brothers' lives, he valued his own life and interests more. Unfortunately, he did not have a second chance. Chu Xiu gave him a chance, but he did not grasp it. He could not blame anyone else. Second brother. Cheng Buhui let out a loud roar. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with sorrow. Even though Dong Xiangyi was ambitious and had his own thoughts, Dong Xiangyi was still his brother for many years. They had fought side by side and supported each other countless times. However, Dong Xiangyi had died in the hands of his own people. This was an outcome that Cheng Buhui could not accept. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu used the extreme speed of the internal binding seal and arrived in front of Cheng Buhui in an instant. The demonic aura on the heavenly demon dance soared into the sky and directly slashed down with great power. Cheng Buhui subconsciously blocked with his sword in sorrow. However, there were ripples in Chu Xiu's eyes. His eyes instantly became like an abyss, pulling Cheng Buhui's mind and immersing him in them. He kept replaying the scene of Dong Xiangyi's death. The soul-shifting technique of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth. Under normal circumstances, when facing an enemy like Cheng Buhui, the effect of the great art of extinguishing heaven and earth and soul-shifting was limited or even ineffective. This was because Cheng Buhui was stronger than Chu Xiu and his state of mind was also extremely strong. There was no loophole at all. Now that Dong Xiangyi had just been killed, it could be said that this was the most unacceptable thing to Cheng Buhui. Therefore, Chu Xiu used this to pull Cheng Buhui's mental strength into it. Although Cheng Buhui reacted almost immediately and wanted to break free, it was already too late. The heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand had already fallen. It cut open his heavy sword and left a hideous knife mark on Cheng Buhui's chest. If Cheng Buhui's reaction was not fast enough, Chu Xiu's knife would have completely taken his life. The demonic aura entered his body and Cheng Buhui spat out a mouthful of blood. He was seriously injured at this moment. While resisting Chu Xiu, Cheng Buhui shouted at Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing, fourth brother, fifth sister. The five of us have been roaming the martial world together for so long. Let's forget about our past grievances. This time I beg of you. Send Master Qiu to Black Glaze City. The reputation of the five heroes of Jiangdong will still be there. Even in the underworld, I Cheng Buhui will not live up to the name of the five heroes of Jiangdong. Chu Xiu continuously slashed with the demonic saber in his hand as he shook his head and said, "Why do you have to do this? Disregarding your own life for the sake of other people's lives. Is it worth sacrificing so much for a piece of trash who deceived you?" The Qingwen Cheng Buhui's hand had already begun to crack from the continuous slashes, but Cheng Buhui still resisted and said in a hoarse voice, "It's too tiring for people to only care about their own interests in life. The five of us owe our benefactor a favor in the past, and now we have to return it. Even if what we have to pay is several times or even dozens of times more than the favor, we still have to return it. Let's not talk about chivalry, we just want to have a clear conscience." Chu Xiu shook his head. He really couldn't understand a person like Cheng Buhui. He was a determined person, but he was also a stubborn person. Among those who achieved great things, at least 80% of them had this kind of trait. However, the other 20% of luck was extremely important. Chu Kuanga had succeeded in the past, so he became a hero respected by millions. Now it was obvious that Cheng Buhui had failed. Chu Xiu coldly said to Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing, "I've given each of you a chance. Now I'll give you one last chance. Capture Qiu Dongmao and hand him over to me after I kill Cheng Buhui. You can live, and you can live very well. Otherwise, I'll send all of you to the underworld to become sworn brothers." Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing looked at each other, and both of them showed signs of struggle in their eyes. It would be useless for them to save Cheng Buhui now. It would be no different from sending themselves to their deaths. Chu Xiu's strength had already exceeded their imagination. He was an existence that completely surpassed the three-flower realm. They would only be sending themselves to their deaths if they went. However, if they had to choose to stand on Chu Xiu's side and drag out an ignoble existence, they would not be able to do such a thing. Although Wu Tiandong resented Cheng Buhui and the others, he had still been brothers with Cheng Buhui for so many years. Others aside, at least Cheng Buhui had taught him many things. It was the same for Lu Qingqing. Back then, Cheng Buhui was the one who saved her. Even if Lu Qingqing wanted to find a safe way out, they could not just let her betray Cheng Buhui. Therefore, the two of them looked at each other, gritted their teeth, and immediately carried Qiu Dongmao away. They did not want to die, nor did they want to betray Cheng Buhui. There was only one choice left for them, and that was to escape. Chapter 305. Seeing that Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing did not stand on Chu Xiu's side, and instead listened to him and escaped with their men, Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a trace of gratification. Although the two of them didn't choose to die with him, at least they didn't betray him, and that was enough. Cheng Buhui laughed heartily as he looked at Chu Xiu. "Among my brothers, none of them will be your spy." It was only now that Cheng Buhui was certain that Chu Xiu had been lying to them from the beginning. If no one was a spy, then no one would betray him. He could accept death, but he could not accept the betrayal of his brothers. However, Cheng Buhui did not know that Chu Xiu had never intended to incite the other four to become his spy from the beginning. Even Wu Tiandong, who was the most immature among them, and Lu Qingqing, who no longer wanted to roam the pugilistic world, had been friends with Cheng Buhui and the others for many years. If Chu Xiu could so easily incite them to work for him, then the relationship between the five heroes of Jiangdong would be too fragile. What Chu Xiu wanted to do was to make them suspect each other. Even if there were no spies, this suspicion would turn into one. Looking at Cheng Buhui, Chu Xiu said expressionlessly, So you can die contentedly? Hero Cheng, I'm here to send you on your way today." As soon as he finished speaking, the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand exploded with a dazzling blood-red light. At the same time, countless demonic and blood-red qi intertwined to form an extremely strange blade aura. The heavenly demon dance had its own demonic qi, and Chu Xiu's blood-refined divine power was also an extremely evil type of power. The combination of the two produced an extremely evil and terrifying power. Chung Buhui's eyes revealed a hint of death, but he still raised the heavy sword in his hand. As long as he could hold on for another 15 minutes, Wu Tiandong and the others would have another 15 minutes to live. However, at this moment, the previously exhausted Lu Tong suddenly exploded with the last of his strength and leaped in front of Chung Buhui. He shouted, "Big brother, let's go." Blood-colored demonic chi rained down, and Lu Tong, who could no longer lift his sword, was directly cut into two by Chu Xiu's saber. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere. For LV Tong, he had achieved what he wanted. He had killed Dong Xiangyi, the traitor in his eyes, and he had also blocked Chu Xiu's saber for Chung Buhui. In this life, they were not fated to be brothers again. They could only wait for their next life. Third brother. Chung Buhui roared with bloodshot eyes and caught Lu Tong's corpse in a frenzy. After the five of them became sworn brothers, even if Chung Buhui tried his best to be fair, there was still some distance between them. LV Tong was the first person he had saved, so naturally, she was the one he had spent the longest time with. After so many years, Chung Buhui had come to the conclusion that no matter who betrayed him, LV Tong would never betray him. In the past, Chung Buhui might have been willing to sacrifice himself and talk about faith and morality with Chu Xiu. However, now that he had seen LV Tong die in front of him, Chung Buhui was truly regretful. He regretted everything he had persevered for, and he questioned whether everything he had persevered for was worth it. Could it be that before he could figure it out, Chu Xiu's eerie saber that carried the demonic chi of Avisanaraka had already fallen? Your brother risked his life to fight for this opportunity for you, but you didn't cherish it. What a waste. Chu Xiu's voice slowly faded, and the saber's momentum also fell with a loud bang. Chung Buhui subconsciously raised the light mountain sword in his hand to block. However, although his light mountain sword was a sixth transformation precious weapon, it was no match for the heavenly demon dance, which had the foundation of a divine weapon. After a series of collisions, the light mountain sword was already badly damaged, and in the end, it was shattered by Chu Xiu's saber. The light mountain sword was Chung Buhui's only hope after the destruction of the hegemon sword villa. Now that the light mountain sword was shattered by Chu Xiu's saber, Chung Buhui felt that there was no meaning in living anymore. The protective aura around his body was easily shattered by Chu Xiu, and he was also easily killed by Chu Xiu's saber. Looking at Chung Buhui's corpse on the ground, Chu Xiu paused for a moment, and he suddenly felt a little emotional in his heart. After roaming the Jianghu for so many years, the memories of his soul from his previous life and this life had already perfectly fused together. And it had also changed Chu Xiu's mentality a lot. Just like how others evaluated Chu Xiu, he was bold and decisive, and at the same time, greedy and self-interested. It could be said that for his own benefit, for his own path, Chu Xiu dared to do anything, by hook or by crook. On the other hand, Chung Buhui was the exact opposite of Chu Xiu. He could be said to be a true chivalrous man, and he did not owe anyone anything when it came to morality. Even that time with Lu Qingqing, he did not take the initiative. What was good, and what was evil? In the eyes of most people, Chung Buhui and the other Jiangdong 5 heroes were good, and he Chu Xiu was evil. However, in Chu Xiu's opinion, the living was the truth. As for the dead, it wasn't certain what it was. In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult was at its peak, even the self-proclaimed righteous disciples had to respectfully address the devil envoys of the Kunlun devil cult as Lord Sacred Envoy, when they saw them. In the end, after Dugu Weiwa went missing after his battle with Ning Xuanji, the Kunlun demon sect fell apart in just a short span of 10 years. After a few hundred years had passed, only the die-hard members of the phaseless demon sect would continue to address the Kunlun demon sect as the saint sect. The others would spit out a mouthful of saliva in disdain, scolding them as demons of the demon sect. None of them could recall how their ancestor had fawned over the Kunlun demon sect when he addressed them as the saint envoy. Therefore, in the pugilistic world, the so-called righteous and evil were not eternal. Only power was the only truth. Although his current body was the cult master of the devil cult in the original plot, the plot had changed greatly. Even Chu Xiu himself did not know whether Chu Xiu would walk the path of evil in the future. However, it did not matter anymore. In the past, Chu Xiu might have been conflicted about this, but now Chu Xiu had thought it through. When he truly reached the peak, the so-called righteous and evil would only be a matter of a word from him. The death of Cheng Buhui, the righteous hero, made Chu Xiu's state of mind a lot clearer. Unfortunately, Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing still had to die. This was also the way Chu Xiu had always done things. Either he did nothing, or he went to the extreme. Even if Cheng Buhui really made Chu Xiu admire him, as long as he stood in his way, he would still die. Throwing a healing elixir into his mouth, Chu Xiu did not even carefully refine it before he chased after them. Among the Jiangdong Five, only Cheng Buhui, Dong Xiangyi, and Lu Tong could pose a real threat to Chu Xiu. Now that they were all dead, it was only a matter of time before Chu Xiu wanted to kill them. At this time, in the dense forest, Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing were fleeing with Qiu Dongmao, not daring to look back at all. Lu Qingqing's face was still filled with fear, while Wu Tiandong's face was livid, and he did not say a word. What had happened in the past few days was like a nightmare. A few days ago, they were still valiant and respected by the people of pugilistic world. The Jiangdong Five had quite a reputation in Eastern Qi. But a few days later, they had already broken up with each other and killed each other. The ugly emotions in human nature had erupted in an instant, completely destroying the five of them. Dong Xiangyi was dead, and Lu Tong was almost dead as well. Although Wu Tiandong did not see the results, he knew that his elder brother was most likely in danger. At this time, Wu Tiandong was also regretting his narrow-mindedness and falling out with his elder brother and the others. He was also the instigator of this matter. At this time, Qiu Dongmao, who was being carried on Wu Tiandong's back, felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. He hurriedly said, "Young hero Wu, Miss Lu, don't worry. When you send me to Black Glaze City, I will definitely let His Highness take action and avenge Master Cheng and the others. Also, the two of you will definitely be rewarded by His Highness." Hearing this, Lu Qingqing was a little moved, but Wu Tiandong shouted angrily, "Shut up! It's all because of you. If it weren't for you, how would we, the Jiangdong Five, end up like this?" Hearing this, Qiu Dongmao shrank his neck and immediately did not dare to speak. At this time, Chu Xiu's voice came from behind Wu Tiandong and the others. TSK, it's rare for you to think things through now, but unfortunately it's too late. This good-for-nothing has been lying to you all this time. Do you really think that you're protecting the only son of your benefactor? He's more like an enemy. Moreover, with his current value, will the Crown Prince avenge him? It's probably impossible for the Crown Prince to even see him. Qiu Dongmao is just a pawn in the Crown Prince's hands, but now that the game is over, what's the use of having him as a pawn? Therefore this Qiu Dongmao is just a good-for-nothing. Seeing Chu Xiu's figure attack from behind, Wu Tiandong and the others immediately turned pale. Since Chu Xiu had already rushed over, there was no need to say what kind of ending Cheng Buhui would end up with. Thinking of this, Wu Tiandong's eyes revealed a look of grief. Previously, because of Lu Qingqing's matter, he did indeed have some resentment towards Cheng Buhui and the others. But now they were all dead. Especially when he thought of his elder brother, Cheng Buhui, who was like a father to him and had always helped him when he first started out, was also dead. Wu Tiandong felt as if his heart was being pierced by needles. He was already somewhat regretful now. He regretted why he and the others had helped Qiu Dongmao, regretted why he had listened to Chu Xiu's instigation and fallen out with his elder brother and the others, regretted why he had escaped just now instead of dying together with Cheng Buhui. Putting down Qiu Dongmao, Wu Tiandong pulled out the two autumn moon blades from his waist. With an angry roar, the blades around him spiraled like a hurricane and slashed wildly at Chu Xiu. At this moment, he was actually fighting with his life against Chu Xiu like a madman. A strange look flashed across Chu Xiu's eyes. "Have you thought it through now? Unfortunately, it's too late." The heavenly demon dance slashed down. Demonic qi surged and blood surged. With one slash, Wu Tiandong was sent flying while vomiting blood. With two slashes, the autumn moon blades in Wu Tiandong's hands were directly shattered. With 3 slashes, a Vichy Hell's Gate of Death opened wide. With 3 consecutive slashes, Wu Tiandong's body flew out like a rag doll. His head rolled to the side and blood gushed out along the headless body. Seeing Chu Xiu's gaze, Lu Qingqing could no longer care about her grief. Her eyes were already filled with fear. "Don't kill me. I promise you. I promise you that I will submit to the second prince." Lu Qingqing shook her head and shouted in horror. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's too late. Actually, I don't really like to kill women, so I gave you 2 chances but you didn't cherish them. Also, I lied to you about one thing. Actually, I'm not familiar with the second prince." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu's eyes were like 2 deep pools. He unleashed the great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth and soul transfer to the extreme. Lu Qingqing, who was already on the verge of a mental breakdown, was instantly pulled into that boundless abyss. When she regained consciousness again, the demonic qi and blood condensed into blades had completely pierced through her body. Chapter 306. With the deaths of Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong had completely become a legend. Apart from Chu Xiu, the only person who had caused the destruction of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong was Qiu Dongmao. If Chu Xiu were to evaluate Qiu Dongmao, he would only be able to say that he was a good-for-nothing. At most, he was a good-for-nothing who was clever. In all fairness, Qiu Zhenxing had indeed been a little unfair to him. Just because of an oath, he had labeled Qiu Dongmao as an illegitimate son and thrown him to Shangyang. However, Qiu Dongmao had also failed to live up to expectations. Qiu Zhenxing could not give him these things, so did he not want to fight for them himself? If Chu Xiu had been in Qiu Dongmao's position, he would have definitely exposed his identity first, and then used Qiu Zhenxing's reputation to develop his own power. As for whether he would fall out with Qiu Zhenxing, how could he care so much at this moment? However, Qiu Dongmao had endured for more than 20 years without making a move. It was not until the Crown Prince sent someone to look for him that he realized that his opportunity had come. To be honest, Qiu Dongmao was indeed very tolerant. Even Qiu Zhenxing had never suspected that this obedient illegitimate son of his would want to harm him, and have such sinister thoughts. Unfortunately, Qiu Dongmao was wrong about one thing. He thought that this was an opportunity, but he failed to see that he, Qiu Dongmao, was actually just a small chess piece in this game. In this game of chess, the Crown Prince and the Second Prince were the players, while Qiu Dongmao, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, and the others were all chess pieces. Jiang Wenyuan was also a chess piece, but he thought that he was also a player. In the end he failed and was thrown out of the chessboard. As for Chu Xiu, he was neither a chess piece nor a player. He was just an outsider, but he had relied on his own strength to fight his way into the chessboard and snatch some chess pieces and benefits. Qiu Dongmao looked terrified as he looked at Chu Xiu. He said in a low voice, "Official Chu, what do you want to ask? I will tell you everything I know. I only ask that you do not hand me over to the second prince. Please do not kill me." Chu Xiu patted Qiu Dongmao's shoulder and said calmly, "I told you, I'm not that close to the second prince, and I don't plan to hand you over to him. It's just that you're too smart. Even if I ask you, you won't tell me the truth. Tell me that I'd rather take it myself." Before Qiu Dongmao could react, Chu Xiu's eyes had already turned into a bottomless abyss, pulling Qiu Dongmao into it. Chu Xiu had already cultivated the great technique of extinguishing the skies and destroying the earth-soul transfer to a profound degree. It might not be as overbearing as Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique when facing martial artists of the same level, but when facing martial artists of Qiu Dongmao's level, the great technique of extinguishing the skies and destroying the earth-soul transfer really had the power to transfer souls. At this time, Qiu Dongmao's body was constantly trembling. His spiritual power had been completely occupied by Chu Xiu's spiritual power, which was violently searching through his memory. There were many memory-related methods among the spiritual secret methods of Taoism and Buddhism. However, in Chu Xiu's eyes, these methods were somewhat similar to hypnosis, which made warriors involuntarily fall into it and take the initiative to say everything. Now what Chu Xiu was doing was violently destroying Qiu Dongmao's spiritual power. Then, like raiding a house, he found everything he wanted in his spiritual power. The result was that Qiu Dongmao would completely become an idiot. The advantage was that this method would never go wrong. After a quarter of an hour, Chu Xiu had gotten what he wanted. At this time, Qiu Dongmao's face was dull, and he looked straight at Chu Xiu with listless eyes. His spiritual power had been completely destroyed by Chu Xiu. Now he looked like an idiot. However, Chu Xiu did not choose to kill Qiu Dongmao. He was using the tiger's skin as a banner. Chu Xiu was now a member of the Guanzhong torture room. If he wanted to kill someone, there must be a reason. Even if the reason was very nonsensical, there must be one. Chu Xiu's reason had been very clear from the beginning. Qiu Dongmao was a survivor of Qiu Zhenqing's case. Although the Eastern Qi Imperial Court had said that Qiu Zhenqing's case had been closed, as a member of the Guanzhong torture room, he must find out the truth and arrest the criminal. As for the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, they had shielded Qiu Dongmao, a criminal. Whether it was intentional or not, they deserved to die. Chu Xiu took Qiu Dongmao, who had become an idiot, all the way back to Qiu Zhenqing's manor on the Pegasus Ranch in Ji State. At this time, outside Qiu Zhenqing's manor, there were only a few dragon riders, imperial guards guarding the gate. Even Fang Zhenqi had left. After all, in their view, this matter had been closed. What was the point of staying here? Seeing that Chu Xiu had returned with Qiu Dongmao, the other dragon riders' imperial guards were all confused. What was going on? Chu Xiu sent Qiu Dongmao to the dragon riders' imperial guard and said, "Send this guy to Lord Fang. Tell him that he is a survivor of Qiu Zhenqing's case. The poison of July begonia in Qiu Zhenqing's body was caused by him. He wanted to kill his brother so that he could inherit the Pegasus Ranch." The dragon rider's imperial guard was stunned. "But isn't the case closed?" Chu Xiu said lightly. "Who said that there can't be a murderer after the case is closed? Give this to Lord Fang. He will know what to do." As he spoke, Chu Xiu handed a piece of paper to the dragon rider's imperial guard. On it was written the process of the crown prince sending people to Eastern Qi to meet Qiu Dongmao. Although there was no direct evidence, this kind of thing did not need evidence. The second prince only needed to know what the crown prince was doing behind the scenes. Although this matter could not cause too much harm to the crown prince, it could still make the crown prince's reputation a little worse. Qiu Dongmao relied on him, but the plan failed. He could not protect Qiu Dongmao. This matter was mainly a blow to the crown prince's reputation among his own people. Chu Xiu believed that the second prince would know what to do. As for Chu Xiu, this matter had nothing to do with him. In the eyes of outsiders, Chu Xiu spent so much effort to capture Qiu Dongmao just to do something for the second prince. In other words, he had some kind of cooperation with the second prince. Naturally, the second prince would take the blame for him. The dragon rider imperial guard took the paper. He also knew that Chu Xiu had a relationship with their general Fang Zhenqi. Now, some people in the know were also spreading that Chu Xiu was actually on the second prince's side. Therefore, he did not dare to neglect Chu Xiu. He immediately found someone to send the news of Qiu Dongmao and Fang Zhenqi to Qiu Dongmao. "Right, has Qiu Zhenqing's body been taken care of?" Chu Xiu asked. The dragon rider imperial guard replied, "Not yet. So many things have happened in the court during this period of time. Qiu Zhenqing's death has been forgotten, so it is still preserved in the room. However, the court is choosing the next person in charge of the Pegasus farm. It is estimated that Qiu Zhenqing's body will only be completely buried after the choice is made." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's fine. There are still some undetected clues on Qiu Zhenqing's body. I have to carefully look at it again. After returning to the Guanzhong torture room, I can report the details of this case to my superior." The dragon rider imperial guard did not suspect anything. The people in the Guanzhong torture room had seen the body countless times. Now, it was not a big deal for Chu Xiu to look at it again. Therefore, the dragon rider imperial guard directly let Chu Xiu in. He did not even follow him in to check. Chu Xiu walked into the room where the body was placed. He picked up Qiu Zhenqing's right hand, closed his fingers, and used a special clay used to forge weapon models to copy Qiu Zhenqing's entire right hand. In Qiu Dongmao's memory, Chu Xiu successfully found information about the place where Qiu Zhenqing hid his treasure. To be honest, the place where Qiu Zhenqing hid his things was quite tricky. Ordinary people would store their treasures and other things in their own homes. This was convenient for them to access, and the home was also the place with the strongest power, so it was safe enough. However, Qiu Zhenxing took a different approach. He did not hide his things in his home at all. Instead, he chose to hide them in a place near the Pegasus Farm. The Pegasus Farm was the largest farm in Eastern Qi. Almost 90% of Eastern Qi's warhorses were produced in the Pegasus Farm. Therefore, the Pegasus Farm's defense was much stricter and safer than Qiu Zhenxing's home. Moreover, as the owner of the Pegasus Farm, Qiu Zhenxing was the only one who could enter and leave the farm at will. Hiding around the farm was much safer than hiding in his home. The key to open Qiu Zhenxing's treasure was his right hand. It was made by a master who was proficient in mechanisms that Qiu Zhenxing hired. It had to be exactly the same as his right hand to open it. If his body was destroyed after his death, no one would be able to open the treasure. After leaving Qiu Zhenxing's farm, Chu Xiu came to a small valley near the Pegasus Farm. Based on the information he obtained from Qiu Dongmao's memory, he spent some effort to find the entrance. He used the fake hand that he had copied to open the door of the mechanism. Qiu Dongmao had never been to this place before. Qiu Zhenxing had only told his illegitimate son where he hid his wealth just in case. The treasure vault was not big. It was only 6 feet in radius. After all, with Qiu Zhenxing's strength, it was impossible for him to accumulate too much even if he was the owner of the Pegasus Farm. Most of the things here were various cultivation resources such as elixirs and elixirs. There were also some strange metals used for refining weapons. There were even quite a number of gold, silver, and jewelry. It was hard to imagine that Qiu Zhenxing, who had a simple personality, would collect these things. However, Chu Xiu did not even look at these things. Instead, he rummaged through a pile of cultivation methods and secret boxes. Finally, he found the thing that he had always wanted. It was a very ordinary cultivation method. It did not even have a title on the cover. It was written on an extremely flexible paper. The words were simple and mysterious. There were also diagrams describing the heaven, earth, and man, as well as the 5 elements and 8 trigrams. At first glance, one would feel dizzy. This seemingly ordinary cultivation method had a very famous name in the future. It was called the Heaven Sun Gazing at Air. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.